In 1947, something fell from the sky near Roswell, New Mexico. What the military recovered that day would remain classified for decades, spawning theories that ranged from the mundane to the extraordinary. Yet Roswell was only the beginning. Over the following 75 years, pilots would report encounters with objects defying the laws of physics. Governments would investigate in secret while publicly denying the phenomena existed. Scientists would debate whether we share the cosmos with other intelligent beings. And the question of what these objects represent would become intertwined with deeper questions about institutional credibility, the limits of human knowledge, and humanity's place in the universe. Tonight we're exploring one of the most enduring mysteries in modern history, the question of unidentified aerial phenomena and what governments have known and concealed about them. This is not a story of certainty. It's a story of evidence, contradiction, and the gaps between official statements and classified investigations. We'll examine the most credible sightings, the most compelling testimonies, and the most intriguing questions that remain unanswered. We'll explore how institutions have managed information about these phenomena, why governments maintain denial for decades, and what recent acknowledgments suggest about what may still be hidden. This exploration is built on decades of research, declassified documents, and testimony from military officers, pilots, and scientists whose professional credibility cannot be easily dismissed. We'll examine the evidence carefully, consider multiple explanations, and acknowledge what we genuinely don't know. We'll move thoughtfully through this material, taking time to understand not just what happened, but why these phenomena have captivated human imagination and challenged our understanding of reality itself. Our journey unfolds in several movements. First, we'll examine the origins, the foundational incidents like Roswell and the early investigations that established the pattern of official denial. Then we'll explore the credible encounters, the accounts from trained military observers, and the physical evidence that resists conventional explanation. We'll consider the institutional responses, how governments managed information, and why transparency proved so difficult. And finally, we'll examine what remains mysterious, the questions that investigation has yet to answer, and the possibilities that future research might reveal. This is a story designed for thoughtful exploration, for questions without easy answers, and for falling asleep while remaining genuinely intrigued. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin this journey together. The Roswell Incident. What fell from the sky? On the evening of July 2, 1947, something fell from the sky near Corona, New Mexico. The exact nature of that fall would remain contested for decades, spawning theories that ranged from the mundane to the extraordinary. But on that summer night, a rancher named W.W. Mac Brazel had no way of knowing that his discovery would become the foundation stone of modern UFO mythology, or that it would raise enduring questions about government transparency and the nature of truth itself. Brazel was a practical man, accustomed to the rhythms of ranch life in the high desert of New Mexico. On his property, approximately 75 miles northwest of Roswell, he discovered something unusual scattered across his land, metallic fragments, pieces of material that didn't match anything he recognized. The debris field was substantial, covering an area roughly 3/4 of a mile long and several hundred feet wide. Among the fragments were thin metallic sheets, some bearing unusual markings or symbols. There were also pieces of what appeared to be wood, though the wood seemed different, somehow lighter, more resilient than ordinary timber. Brazel reported his discovery to the local sheriff, who in turn contacted the U.S. Army Air Force Base near Roswell. Within hours, military personnel arrived at the ranch. What happened next would set in motion a sequence of events that continues to reverberate through American culture. The military collected the debris, carefully gathering the fragments and loading them onto trucks. Officers interviewed Brazel and examined the landing site. The initial assessment, it seemed, was significant enough to warrant immediate action, and secrecy. On July 8, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release that would become one of the most famous and quickly retracted statements in American history. The release announced that the military had recovered a flying disc. The language was measured but unmistakable. Officers described the object as a disc-shaped craft recovered from a ranch near Roswell. The statement suggested something extraordinary had occurred. Newspapers across the country ran the story. The headline was sensational. The military had apparently recovered an unidentified flying object. For a few hours, the narrative seemed clear. Then within 24 hours, everything changed. Military officials issued a new statement. They had been mistaken, they explained. What they had recovered was not a flying disc at all, but rather a weather balloon, specifically a Mogul surveillance device. The Mogul program was classified at the time, designed to detect Soviet atomic tests through acoustic monitoring. The device consisted of a cluster of weather balloons carrying sensitive listening equipment. When the balloon cluster failed, it fell to Earth, scattering debris across the desert. This, officials insisted, was the rational explanation for what Brazil had found. The explanation was plausible. The Mogul program did exist. Weather balloons did occasionally crash. The debris field could theoretically result from such a failure. Yet something about the official narrative troubled observers, even at the time. Eyewitness accounts painted a different picture. Military personnel who handled the debris described materials that seemed unusual. The metallic fragments, according to multiple witnesses, possessed properties unlike conventional aircraft materials. Some described the metal as impossibly thin, yet resilient. It couldn't be torn or burned, despite attempts to damage it. Some witnesses reported symbols or markings etched into the fragment's geometric patterns that suggested intentional design rather than accidental damage. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who had examined the debris at the ranch, later stated that the material he handled was unlike anything he had encountered in his military experience. In interviews conducted decades after the incident, Marcel described the metallic fragments as having unusual properties. He spoke of their resistance to damage, their peculiar weight, their unfamiliar composition. Other military witnesses corroborated aspects of his account. The consistency of these descriptions, emerging from multiple independent observers over many years, suggested that something genuinely unusual had been recovered. Over the following decades, the Roswell incident became the subject of intense investigation and speculation. Researchers interviewed witnesses, many of whom had remained silent for years, constrained by military secrecy, oaths, or personal caution. Declassified documents gradually emerged, revealing that the military's investigation of the incident had been more extensive than public statements suggested. In 1995, the Air Force released a detailed report addressing the Roswell incident. The report acknowledged that the initial flying disc announcement had been a mistake, but it reaffirmed that the recovered object was a Mogul surveillance device. The Air Force provided technical details about the Mogul program, explaining how the debris field could result from a balloon cluster failure. Yet the 1995 report, rather than settling the question, intensified debate. Critics noted inconsistencies between the official explanation and witness testimony. The Mogul program, while real, had not been publicly acknowledged in 1947. Military officials could not have immediately identified the debris as Mogul material, as they claimed. The rapid shift from flying disc to weather balloon suggested either confusion or deliberate misdirection. Why would officials issue a dramatic initial statement only to retract it so quickly? The sequence of events seemed designed to obscure rather than clarify. What remains clear is that something fell near Roswell in 1947. The military recovered it. Officials initially described it as a flying disc, then changed their account. Eyewitnesses described materials with unusual properties. Decades of investigation have produced no definitive answer to the fundamental question: What exactly crashed in the New Mexico desert? The official explanation, a mogul surveillance device, accounts for some aspects of the incident, but not all. The alternative hypothesis that an extraterrestrial craft crashed near Roswell remains speculative, lacking definitive physical evidence. The Roswell incident established a pattern that would characterize government responses to unexplained phenomena for decades to come. Official denial followed by a gradual revelation. Public skepticism followed by a declassified confirmation of facts previously denied. The credibility gap between initial statements and later revelations created lasting suspicion. If the military had misled the public about Roswell, what else might they be concealing? This question would haunt discussions of UFO phenomena throughout the Cold War and beyond. The incident also revealed something fundamental about how institutions manage information. The military's initial flying disc statement suggests that officers genuinely believed they had recovered something extraordinary. The rapid retraction suggests pressure from higher authorities to contain the narrative. The subsequent decades of denial, followed by acknowledgment that the incident had occurred and been investigated, suggest a calculated strategy of information management. The goal appeared to be controlling public perception while maintaining operational security. What the Roswell incident ultimately demonstrates is the complexity of investigating historical events when official sources are unreliable. Eyewitness testimony becomes crucial, yet eyewitness accounts are inherently subjective. Physical evidence would be definitive, yet no authenticated physical evidence from the incident exists in public hands. The truth about Roswell may lie somewhere between the official explanation and the extraordinary claims, or it may remain permanently obscured by the passage of time and the destruction of evidence. What is certain is that Roswell became a watershed moment in American culture, the point at which questions about government transparency and extraterrestrial contact became intertwined in the public imagination. As we move forward in this exploration, we'll examine how the military systematized its investigation of UFO phenomena, establishing formal programs to study reports that continued to arrive from pilots, military personnel, and civilians across the country. The Roswell incident had raised the question. Now institutions would attempt to answer it through systematic investigation. Project Blue Book, the military's systematic investigation. The Roswell incident had raised urgent questions about unidentified objects in American airspace. In the years following 1947, reports of UFO sightings continued to arrive from across the country from military pilots, commercial aviators, civilians, and trained observers. The military could no longer simply dismiss these accounts. Something needed to be done, systematically, officially, and with the appearance of scientific rigor. In 1952, the U.S. Air Force established Project Blue Book, a formal investigation program that would become the most extensive government study of UFO phenomena ever conducted. Captain Edward Ruppelt was assigned to direct the program. Ruppelt was a decorated Air Force officer with a background in engineering and a reputation for methodical thinking. He understood that the Air Force faced a credibility challenge. If UFO reports were dismissed out of hand, the public would suspect a cover-up. If they were taken too seriously, panic might result. The solution, Ruppelt believed, was to investigate thoroughly, document findings carefully, and apply scientific methodology to separate genuine anomalies from misidentifications and hoaxes. The program's stated mission was clear: investigate UFO sightings, determine whether they posed a threat to national security, and explain the phenomena through conventional means whenever possible. Over the next 17 years, Project Blue Book would become a vast undertaking. Investigators received reports from military bases, civilian airports, and private citizens. Each report was documented, filed, and investigated according to standardized procedures. Witnesses were interviewed, photographs were analyzed, radar data was examined. Astronomers and physicists were consulted to determine whether sightings could be explained as celestial phenomena or misidentifications of known objects. The program maintained offices at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, which served as the central repository for all UFO data collected by the military. The scope of the investigation was substantial. Between 1952 and 1969, Project Blue Book documented 12,618 sightings. This represented an enormous volume of data collected from diverse sources across the continental United States and beyond. Each case was assigned a classification: explained, probably explained, or unidentified. The vast majority of sightings fell into the first two categories. Investigators attributed many reports to Venus-Jupiter or other bright celestial objects. Others were identified as weather balloons, aircraft, or atmospheric phenomena. Still others were classified as psychological misidentifications or hoaxes. Yet a significant residue remained. Approximately 701 cases, roughly 5.6% of the total, were classified as unidentified. These were sightings that investigators could not attribute to known aircraft weather phenomena, natural occurrences, or psychological factors. The methodology employed by Project Blue Book was rigorous for its time. Investigators developed standardized forms for reporting sightings, ensuring consistency across different cases and locations. They conducted interviews with witnesses attempting to establish the reliability and credibility of observers. They analyzed photographs and film footage, consulting with experts in optics and photography to determine authenticity. They examined radar data, working with radar specialists to understand what instruments had detected. They consulted with astronomers to rule out celestial explanations. They worked with aircraft manufacturers and military personnel to identify conventional aircraft that might have been misidentified. This systematic approach represented a genuine attempt to apply scientific methodology to the investigation of anomalous phenomena. Pattern interrupts in the data began to emerge. Certain types of sightings clustered around military installations. Others occurred near areas of classified military activity. Some sightings involved multiple independent witnesses who provided consistent descriptions. Others involved radar confirmation objects detected simultaneously by multiple radar systems, making simple misidentification less likely. The investigators noted that some sightings displayed characteristics inconsistent with known technology. Objects described as moving at impossible speeds, making turns that would subject occupants to lethal acceleration, or hovering silently without visible propulsion systems. These cases troubled investigators because conventional explanations seemed inadequate. Yet the public face of Project Blue Book contradicted its internal findings. Officials consistently downplayed sightings in press releases and public statements. UFO reports were attributed to Venus weather balloons or psychological factors. The tone of official communications was dismissive. Sightings were presented as misidentifications by untrained observers or the product of overactive imaginations. This public posture created a stark contrast with the internal documents and classified memos that would later be declassified. In those private communications, investigators expressed genuine uncertainty about some cases. Memos acknowledged that certain sightings displayed characteristics that couldn't be easily explained. Some investigators suggested that the phenomena might represent advanced foreign technology. Others speculated about possibilities that extended beyond conventional explanation. This gap between public statements and private assessments reflected institutional pressure. The Air Force faced competing imperatives. On one hand, acknowledging that genuine anomalies existed might suggest that American airspace was vulnerable to intrusion by unknown objects, a troubling implication during the Cold War. On the other hand, investigating UFO reports seriously might lend credibility to claims that seemed scientifically implausible. The solution was to investigate thoroughly while publicly maintaining skepticism. The program could collect data and study phenomena while telling the public that nothing unusual was occurring. Captain Ruppelt eventually became frustrated with this approach. He believed that the Air Force's public statements were undermining the credibility of the investigation. If the military claimed that all UFO sightings could be explained, yet continued to investigate them, systematically, observers would naturally suspect that officials were lying. Ruppelt advocated for greater transparency, arguing that honest acknowledgment of unexplained cases would actually enhance institutional credibility. His recommendations were not adopted. Instead, the official policy remained one of public skepticism combined with private investigation. By the 1960s, pressure mounted to terminate Project Blue Book. Critics argued that the program was unproductive from a scientific standpoint. The University of Colorado, under the direction of physicist Edward Condon, was commissioned to conduct an independent evaluation of Blue Book's work. The Condon report, released in 1968, concluded that UFO study had produced no scientific insights and that further investigation was unlikely to be productive. The report recommended terminating Project Blue Book. The Air Force accepted this recommendation, and the program was officially closed in December 1969. The final official statement claimed that no UFO sightings posed a threat to national security and that no evidence of extraterrestrial contact had been found. Yet declassified documents revealed a more complex reality. Internal Air Force assessments often contradicted public conclusions. Classified memos indicated that some sightings remained genuinely unexplained. Investigators had documented cases involving multiple witnesses, radar confirmation, and physical evidence that resisted conventional explanation. Some officers had privately expressed the view that certain phenomena might represent advanced technology beyond current American capabilities. These private assessments suggested that the official public position that all sightings could be explained was not supported by the investigators' actual findings. The closure of Project Blue Book did not end government investigation of UFO phenomena. Investigation continued, but it became less visible and less systematic. Files were classified or destroyed. Witnesses were discouraged from speaking publicly. The official position became one of complete denial. The government was not investigating UFO phenomena because there was nothing to investigate. This posture would persist for decades until declassified documents and congressional pressure eventually forced acknowledgment that investigation had indeed continued. Project Blue Book demonstrated a fundamental tension in how institutions handle unexplained phenomena. The program represented a genuine attempt to investigate anomalies systematically and scientifically. Yet the investigation occurred within an institutional context that prioritized other concerns: national security, institutional credibility, and public confidence. The result was a program that collected extensive data while publicly dismissing the significance of its findings. The gap between what investigators actually found and what officials told the public created a credibility problem that persisted long after the program's closure. The legacy of Project Blue Book raises enduring questions about institutional transparency and the nature of scientific investigation. When institutions investigate phenomena but publicly deny their significance, trust erodes. When classified findings contradict public statements, observers naturally suspect deception. The program also demonstrated that systematic investigation and official denial could coexist, that an institution could study something seriously while maintaining that it didn't warrant serious study. This paradox would characterize government responses to UFO phenomena for decades to come. As we move forward, we'll examine the testimonies of those who witnessed unexplained phenomena, directly military and commercial pilots, whose professional expertise and institutional authority lend credibility to their accounts, and whose experiences often contradicted the official dismissals that characterized the Blue Book era. The pilot testimonies. Credible witnesses break silence. Project Blue Book had attempted to systematize the investigation of UFO phenomena, yet the program's public dismissals contradicted its private findings. But there existed a category of witnesses whose testimony carried particular weight, individuals whose professional training, institutional authority, and observational expertise could not be easily dismissed. These were pilots, military officers, and commercial aviators whose careers depended on accurate observation and precise reporting. When such individuals described encounters with unexplained phenomena, the question shifted from whether something unusual had occurred to what that something might be. Among the earliest and most tragic of these accounts was that of Captain Thomas Mantell. On January 7, 1948, Mantell was flying a P-51 Mustang fighter aircraft near Fort Knox, Kentucky, when he received a radio report of an unusual object in the area. Air traffic control had detected something on radar, a large circular object hovering in the sky. Mantell, an experienced pilot with over 2,000 hours of flight time, decided to investigate. He climbed his aircraft to pursue the object, maintaining radio contact with ground control. His final radio transmission, recorded and preserved in military archives, described what he was observing: something metallic and circular, moving in ways that seemed to defy conventional aerodynamics. Then the transmission ended. Mantell's aircraft lost altitude and crashed near Franklin, Kentucky. The pilot was killed in the accident. The official explanation for Mantell's death was that he had pursued the planet Venus, become disoriented, and crashed while attempting to climb too high without oxygen. This explanation troubled many observers. Mantell was an experienced pilot who would have recognized Venus. He was familiar with celestial objects. Moreover, his description of a metallic circular object didn't match Venus's appearance. The object he described seemed to move deliberately, suggesting intelligent control or autonomous systems. Mantell's death raised difficult questions. Had he encountered something genuinely anomalous? Had he died pursuing an object that conventional explanations couldn't adequately describe? The case established a pattern: pilots reporting unexplained phenomena, official dismissals, and lingering uncertainty about what had actually occurred. 17 years later, in 1965, another significant pilot encounter occurred. On November 3, 1965, multiple pilots witnessed a massive object over Kirtland Air Force Base near Albuquerque, New Mexico. The object was described as silent hovering and capable of instantaneous acceleration. Multiple independent observers, military pilots, ground personnel, and radar operators reported the same phenomenon. The object displayed flight characteristics that seemed impossible for known aircraft. It could hover motionlessly, then accelerate to extraordinary speeds without the gradual acceleration that conventional aircraft require. It made turns that would subject any occupant to lethal G-forces. The witnesses were trained military personnel, accustomed to identifying aircraft and understanding aerodynamic principles. Their descriptions were consistent and detailed, yet the official response was skepticism. The sighting was eventually attributed to a meteor or atmospheric phenomenon, an explanation that didn't satisfy those who had witnessed the event directly. Consider the institutional pressures that pilots face when reporting UFO encounters. Aviation careers are built on credibility and professional standing. A pilot who reports an encounter with unexplained phenomena risks being labeled as unreliable or unstable. Such a reputation can damage career prospects, affect advancement opportunities, and undermine professional relationships. Military pilots face additional pressure. Reporting UFO encounters might suggest that military airspace had been penetrated by unknown objects, implying vulnerability or failure of defense systems. Commercial pilots risk being viewed as unreliable by airlines and insurance companies. The professional incentives all point towards silence. A pilot who reports nothing unusual faces no career consequences. A pilot who reports an encounter with something genuinely anomalous faces potential ridicule, investigation, and career damage. Yet many pilots have chosen to speak publicly, often decades after the incident, suggesting genuine conviction rather than attention-seeking or career advancement. In 1986, commercial pilot Captain John Burchill reported encountering a structured craft over Japan. The encounter was notable because it was tracked simultaneously by military radar, providing independent verification of the object's presence. Burchill described a craft with definite structure and form, not a vague light or atmospheric phenomenon, but an object with clear boundaries and apparent design. The radar data corroborated his visual observation. The object was real, tracked by multiple independent systems. Yet the official response was muted. The encounter was investigated quietly, and no public explanation was offered. The case demonstrated that even with multiple forms of verification, pilot observation, radar confirmation, and structured description, official institutions could respond with silence rather than explanation. These pilot accounts share remarkable consistency. Across different time periods, different locations, and different observers, similar elements recur. Objects displaying flight characteristics beyond known aviation capabilities, speeds that would exceed the structural limits of conventional aircraft turns that would generate lethal accelerations, or the ability to hover silently without visible propulsion. Electromagnetic effects on aircraft systems, instruments malfunctioning, radio interference, or electrical disturbances occurring in proximity to the objects. Witnesses of unquestionable professional standing, individuals whose training and expertise qualified them to distinguish between conventional aircraft and something genuinely anomalous. The consistency of these accounts across independent observers suggests either that similar phenomena are occurring repeatedly, or that observers are describing a genuine category of experience. What makes pilot testimony particularly compelling is the cost of speaking. A commercial pilot who reports an encounter risks his career and reputation. A military pilot who reports an encounter risks his security clearance and advancement. An airline pilot who reports an encounter risks being grounded for psychological evaluation. The professional incentives all point towards silence. Those who speak do so despite these costs, suggesting that their conviction about what they witnessed outweighs the professional risks. They have nothing to gain and much to lose by discussing encounters that mainstream science dismisses as impossible. This asymmetry of incentives lends particular weight to their testimony. The testimonies of pilots also benefit from institutional corroboration. When a pilot reports an encounter, that report is often documented in official, military, or aviation records. Radar data may exist. Communications may be recorded. Ground personnel may have observed the same phenomenon. Multiple independent verification systems can confirm that something was present in the airspace. This distinguishes pilot testimonies from purely anecdotal accounts. A civilian who reports a UFO sighting may be the only observer with no independent verification. A pilot's report often comes with institutional documentation and multiple corroborating sources. Over the decades, more pilots have come forward. In 2010, a group of former military officers held a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., to discuss their UFO encounters. These were individuals with decades of military service, high security clearances, and institutional authority. They described encounters with unexplained phenomena, often involving multiple witnesses and radar confirmation. They expressed frustration with official denial and secrecy. Their willingness to speak publicly, risking their reputations and potentially their security clearances, demonstrated the seriousness with which they regarded their experiences. These were not attention seekers or fringe believers. These were credible professionals from trusted institutions. The significance of pilot testimony lies not in proving what UFO phenomena represent, but in establishing that unexplained aerial phenomena genuinely exist. When credible professionals from trusted institutions describe similar phenomena consistently, the question shifts. It is no longer, did they see something, but rather, what did they see? The phenomena are real, tracked by radar, observed by multiple independent witnesses, documented in official records. The question of origin, nature, and explanation remains open. But the existence of the phenomena themselves becomes difficult to deny when the testimony comes from individuals whose professional credibility and institutional authority cannot be easily dismissed. The pilot testimonies also reveal something about institutional responses to anomalous phenomena. When pilots report encounters, official responses typically follow a pattern: initial investigation, followed by official explanation, that dismisses the encounter as misidentification or conventional phenomenon. This pattern persists even when the official explanation seems inadequate to account for the reported observations. The consistency of this pattern suggests institutional policy rather than case-by-case evaluation. The goal appears to be managing public perception and maintaining the narrative that everything is explicable and under control regardless of what investigators actually find. As we examine the physical location where much of this investigation has been concentrated, a remote military facility in the Nevada desert where classified aircraft are tested and where some claim advanced technology is developed, we'll encounter a place that has become synonymous with UFO phenomena in popular imagination, yet whose actual purpose remains more complex and contested than popular mythology suggests. Area 51, the classified facility and its secrets. The pilot testimonies we've examined demonstrated that credible observers had encountered phenomena that defied conventional explanation. Yet the question remained, what were these objects? Where did they come from? For decades, one location became synonymous with answers to these questions: a remote military facility in the Nevada desert that the government refused to acknowledge even existed. Area 51 represents a unique intersection of legitimate military secrecy, classified technological development, and public speculation about extraterrestrial contact. Approximately 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas, in the vast expanse of the Nevada desert, lies a military installation designated Area 51. The facility is situated within the Nevada Test and Training Range, a vast restricted area used for weapons testing and military operations. For decades, the U.S. government maintained official silence about Area 51's existence. Maps showed the region as empty desert. Official statements denied that any significant military facility occupied the location, yet the site was widely known to exist. Researchers, journalists, and UFO investigators had identified its location, documented its operations, and speculated about its purposes. The contradiction between official denial and public knowledge created a credibility gap that persisted for generations. It wasn't until 2013 that the U.S. government officially acknowledged Area 51's existence, releasing declassified documents that confirmed what observers had long suspected. The actual purpose of Area 51, according to declassified documents, was to serve as a testing ground for experimental aircraft and advanced weapon systems. This was a legitimate military function entirely consistent with national security requirements. During the Cold War, the United States invested enormous resources in developing aircraft that could outperform Soviet capabilities. The U-2 spy plane, developed in the 1950s, represented a revolutionary advance in reconnaissance technology. The aircraft could fly at altitudes exceeding 70,000 feet higher than any Soviet interceptor could reach. The U-2 was tested extensively at Area 51, where its unusual shape and flight characteristics would have appeared extraordinary to observers unfamiliar with its design. The aircraft's high-altitude capability meant it would be visible from great distances, yet its silhouette would be unfamiliar to most observers. Following the U-2, the military developed even more advanced aircraft. The A-12 Oxcart, a precursor to the SR-71 Blackbird, was tested at Area 51 during the 1960s. These aircraft represented the cutting edge of aviation technology. The SR-71 Blackbird, which entered service in 1964, could fly at speeds exceeding Mach 3, more than 3 times the speed of sound. The aircraft's distinctive shape, with its long fuselage and delta wings, was unlike any conventional aircraft. Its capabilities seemed almost impossible. It could accelerate to hypersonic speeds, cruise at altitudes exceeding 85,000 feet, and perform maneuvers that appeared to defy aerodynamic principles. To observers unfamiliar with the aircraft's design, the SR-71 would have appeared as something beyond conventional technology. Its speed, altitude, and maneuverability matched descriptions provided by UFO witnesses during the 1960s and 1970s. The connection between classified aircraft development and UFO sightings is significant. Many UFO reports from the Cold War era occurred in regions near Area 51 or other classified testing facilities. The timing of sightings often coincided with test flights of new aircraft. The descriptions provided by witnesses, unusual shapes, extraordinary speeds, silent propulsion, or impossible maneuvers, match the characteristics of classified aircraft that were being developed and tested. Declassified documents confirm that military officials understood this connection. They recognized that UFO reports could result from sightings of classified aircraft. This understanding informed official policy toward UFO phenomena. Here lies a crucial insight: the military deliberately encouraged UFO rumors to obscure classified aircraft development. Declassified documents reveal this strategy explicitly. If the public believed that UFO sightings represented extraterrestrial craft, they would not suspect advanced human technology. The strategy was remarkably effective. Area 51 became synonymous with alien spacecraft in popular imagination. The facility was featured in films, television programs, and popular literature as the location where the government stored recovered extraterrestrial craft. This public narrative served military interests perfectly. It explained the sightings of classified aircraft as alien phenomena, directing public attention away from the actual purpose of the facility. The strategy transformed a legitimate military installation into a symbol of government secrecy and extraterrestrial contact. Yet the extreme secrecy surrounding Area 51 created conditions where genuine mysteries could hide in plain sight. The facility's actual operations were classified. The aircraft being tested were classified. The capabilities of these aircraft were classified. This comprehensive secrecy meant that observers had incomplete information. They could see unusual aircraft, but didn't know what they were seeing. They could observe extraordinary flight characteristics, but didn't understand the technology producing them. In this environment of incomplete information, speculation flourished. Some observers concluded that the phenomena they witnessed must represent extraterrestrial technology, since they appeared beyond conventional capabilities. Others speculated that the government possessed recovered alien craft and was reverse engineering the technology. These speculations were understandable given the information available to observers. Whistleblowers have claimed to possess knowledge of Area 51's actual operations. Most notably, Bob Lazar emerged in 1989 claiming to have worked at a classified facility near Area 51 where the government allegedly reverse-engineered recovered extraterrestrial spacecraft. Lazar described specific technical details about the craft, their propulsion systems, and the materials used in their construction. His claims attracted significant attention and contributed substantially to Area 51's reputation as a center for alien technology research. However, Lazar's accounts remain controversial and largely unverified. His educational credentials could not be confirmed through standard channels. Military and intelligence agencies denied that he had worked at classified facilities. No physical evidence has emerged to support his claims. Yet Lazar's willingness to speak publicly, despite the risks to his credibility and safety, suggests genuine conviction about what he claims to have witnessed. The question persists. Does Area 51 house only experimental aircraft, or does it serve additional purposes? The declassified information confirms that the facility was used for testing advanced aircraft. The connection between classified aircraft development and UFO sightings is well established. Many reports that seemed extraordinary can be explained as sightings of classified aircraft. Yet this explanation may not account for all phenomena. Some sightings occurred in locations far from Area 51. Some sightings involved characteristics that don't match known aircraft capabilities. Some sightings involved multiple independent witnesses and radar confirmation that seemed inconsistent with misidentification of classified aircraft. The possibility remains that Area 51 might house additional operations beyond those officially acknowledged. The truth about Area 51 likely involves both conventional explanation and genuine mystery. Some UFO sightings in the region can be explained as sightings of classified aircraft. The extraordinary characteristics of these aircraft, their speed, altitude, and maneuverability, would have appeared impossible to observers unfamiliar with their design. The military's deliberate encouragement of UFO rumors served to obscure these classified programs. Yet this explanation may not account for all sightings. Some phenomena may represent genuinely anomalous observations that resist conventional explanation. The facility's extreme secrecy creates conditions where both classified aircraft development and that other operations could occur without public knowledge. Area 51 illustrates a broader principle about how legitimate military secrecy can blur with speculation. The facility's actual purpose, testing advanced aircraft, provides rational explanations for some phenomena. The declassified information about classified aircraft development demonstrates that extraordinary appearing objects were indeed being tested in the region. Yet the extreme secrecy surrounding these operations created an information vacuum. In that vacuum, speculation flourished. The public didn't know what was being tested, so they speculated. The government didn't clarify what was occurring, so the speculation persisted. Over time, the distinction between classified aircraft and extraterrestrial craft became blurred in popular imagination. Area 51 transformed from a military testing facility into a symbol of government secrecy and alien contact. The facility also demonstrates how institutions can deliberately manipulate public perception. The military's strategy of encouraging UFO rumors while secretly testing classified aircraft was remarkably effective. It protected classified programs while satisfying public curiosity about unexplained phenomena. It allowed the government to maintain official skepticism toward UFO claims while simultaneously investigating phenomena that resulted from classified aircraft. This strategy created lasting confusion about what UFO phenomena represent and what the government actually knows about them. As we examine the specific claims made by whistleblowers about extraterrestrial technology allegedly recovered and studied at facilities like Area 51, we'll encounter accounts that challenge our understanding of what the government may possess and what it may be concealing about the origins of advanced technology. Bob Lazar, the whistleblower in the S4 facility. Area 51's extreme secrecy had created fertile ground for speculation about what the facility might contain. The military's deliberate encouragement of UFO rumors had blurred the line between classified aircraft development and extraterrestrial contact. Yet in 1989, a specific claim emerged that would crystallize decades of speculation into a detailed narrative. A man named Bob Lazar stepped forward. With an extraordinary account, he claimed to have worked as a physicist at a classified facility near Area 51, where the U.S. government was reverse engineering captured extraterrestrial spacecraft. His testimony would become one of the most controversial and widely discussed claims in UFO history. Lazar's emergence was calculated and deliberate. Rather than simply making vague claims, he appeared on a Las Vegas television station and provided a detailed account of his alleged work. He described 9 disc-shaped craft stored at a facility designated S4, located approximately 12 miles south of Area 51. According to Lazar, these craft represented recovered extraterrestrial technology. He described their physical characteristics: smooth, seamless construction with no visible seams or joints. He spoke of anti-gravity propulsion systems that operated on principles fundamentally different from human engineering. He mentioned exotic materials that didn't match any known terrestrial substances. He claimed that the craft utilized an element he identified as element 115, which he described as a super-heavy element with unique properties that made it suitable as a power source for the propulsion systems. What distinguished Lazar's testimony from purely anecdotal accounts was his technical specificity. He didn't simply describe seeing something unusual. He provided technical descriptions that suggested genuine expertise. He discussed the craft's propulsion mechanisms in terms that implied understanding of advanced physics. He described the interior layout of the craft with specific details about control systems and operational areas. He claimed to have witnessed test flights of recovered craft describing their flight characteristics and capabilities. He spoke with confidence about technical matters, using language that suggested familiarity with classified aerospace programs. This technical specificity attracted attention from researchers and UFO investigators who believed that Lazar's detailed knowledge suggested genuine access to classified information. However, verification of Lazar's claims proved deeply problematic. The first issue involved his educational credentials. Lazar claimed to have attended MIT and Caltech, earning degrees in physics and engineering. Yet when researchers attempted to verify these claims, they encountered obstacles. MIT had no record of Lazar attending the institution. Caltech, similarly, had no record of his attendance. Educational institutions maintained detailed records of students, and the absence of any documentation suggested that Lazar's claimed education might be fabricated. This raised fundamental questions about his credibility. If he had misrepresented his educational background, what else might he have misrepresented? The Los Alamos National Laboratory presented another verification problem. Lazar claimed to have worked at Los Alamos before his alleged employment at S4. He stated that his work at Los Alamos involved classified projects. When researchers and journalists investigated this claim, the Los Alamos Laboratory initially denied that Lazar had worked there. This denial seemed to confirm skeptics' suspicions that Lazar was fabricating his credentials. However, the situation proved more complex. Later investigations suggested that Lazar may have had some connection to Los Alamos, though the nature and extent of that connection remained unclear. The initial denial, followed by hints of possible connection, created ambiguity that neither confirmed nor definitively refuted Lazar's claims. Yet one aspect of Lazar's testimony proved intriguing to supporters. He had claimed that element 115 served as the power source for the extraterrestrial craft. At the time Lazar made this claim in 1989, element 115 did not exist. The periodic table of elements ended at element 118, and element 115 had not been synthesized. However, in 2003, scientists successfully synthesized element 115 in a laboratory. The element was named moscovium. Supporters of Lazar's testimony pointed to this as validation of his claims. They argued that Lazar could not have simply guessed that element 115 would be synthesized. His predictions seemed to suggest genuine knowledge of advanced physics or access to classified information about extraterrestrial technology. Skeptics offered alternative explanations. They noted that element 115 was theoretically predicted to exist before Lazar made his claims. Physicists had calculated that super-heavy elements should exist in the periodic table, and element 115 was a logical prediction. Lazar, with his claimed physics background, would have known that element 115 should theoretically exist. The fact that it was eventually synthesized proved nothing, skeptics argued. It simply confirmed that theoretical predictions about the periodic table were accurate. The coincidence of Lazar's mention and the element's later synthesis could be explained through chance rather than genuine knowledge. The credibility challenges extended beyond educational credentials. Lazar's personal background contained inconsistencies and questionable elements. His employment history was difficult to verify. His current activities and statements sometimes contradicted earlier claims. UFO researchers who investigated Lazar's background found numerous red flags. Some researchers who had initially been sympathetic to his claims eventually concluded that significant aspects of his testimony were unreliable or fabricated. Other researchers remained convinced that despite the credibility problems, the core of his testimony contained genuine information about classified government programs. Yet Lazar's willingness to face public scrutiny distinguished his testimony from purely anecdotal accounts. He appeared on television, provided his name, and allowed himself to be investigated. He submitted to interviews and answered questions about his claims. He didn't hide behind anonymity or refuse verification attempts. This openness could be interpreted as either genuine conviction or sophisticated manipulation. If Lazar was deliberately fabricating his story, his willingness to face scrutiny might represent confidence in his ability to maintain the narrative. If he was reporting genuine experiences, his openness would reflect confidence in the truth of his account. The question of motivation also complicated evaluation of Lazar's testimony. What would motivate someone to make such claims? If the claims were false, Lazar faced ridicule, investigation, and potential legal consequences. He gained no obvious financial benefit from his testimony. He didn't write a best-selling book immediately or capitalize on his claims through commercial ventures. His willingness to speak despite these costs suggested either genuine conviction or a more complex motivation that wasn't immediately apparent. Lazar's case exemplifies fundamental challenges in evaluating extraordinary claims. How do we assess testimony from individuals with apparent technical expertise but unverifiable backgrounds? Educational credentials couldn't be confirmed. Employment history contained gaps and inconsistencies. Yet the technical specificity of his claims suggested genuine knowledge. The prediction about element 115, while explainable through other means, remained intriguing. The detailed descriptions of craft characteristics and operational procedures suggested either genuine access to classified information or remarkable imaginative capacity. The broader question involves evidence standards. In scientific investigation, claims require verification through reproducible evidence or corroborating documentation. Lazar's claims couldn't be verified through either method. No physical evidence from the alleged S4 facility had been produced. No corroborating documentation from other witnesses had emerged. No independent verification of the craft's existence or characteristics had been established. By conventional scientific standards, Lazar's testimony alone, without corroborating evidence, was insufficient to establish the truth of his claims. Yet the absence of evidence proving his claims false also didn't definitively establish that his testimony was false. The situation remained genuinely ambiguous. Lazar's testimony also raised questions about institutional verification and credibility. How do institutions establish whether individuals possess claimed credentials or employment? Educational institutions maintain records, yet those records can be lost, misplaced, or deliberately obscured. Classified employers like Los Alamos maintain security protocols that might prevent confirmation of employment for individuals who worked on classified projects. The institutions designed to verify credentials might themselves be constrained by secrecy requirements. This creates a situation where verification becomes difficult or impossible, not because the claims are false, but because the institutions involved have reasons to deny or obscure the truth. The Lazar case remains controversial and unresolved. No definitive proof has emerged establishing that his claims are true. No definitive proof has emerged establishing that his claims are false. He remains a contested figure in UFO research, viewed by some as a credible whistleblower, providing genuine information about classified government programs, and by others as a fabricator whose claims lack substantiation. The truth about Bob Lazar and the S4 facility may never be definitively established, yet his case demonstrates the difficulty of investigating claims about classified programs and the challenge of distinguishing between genuine whistleblowers and elaborate hoaxes. As we examine another controversial case involving alleged extraterrestrial contact one that occurred in a remote forest and resulted in a missing person who later reappeared with memories of an extraordinary encounter, we'll encounter similar questions about credibility, evidence, and the nature of testimony regarding experiences that seem to defy conventional explanation. Travis Walton, the abduction case that divided investigators. The claims made by Bob Lazar involved alleged access to classified facilities and recovered extraterrestrial technology. Yet another category of UFO encounter existed cases where individuals reported direct contact with extraterrestrial beings. Among the most extensively documented of these alleged abduction cases is the experience of Travis Walton, a logger whose 5-day disappearance in an Arizona forest became one of the most controversial and widely discussed UFO incidents in American history. On November 5, 1975, in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona, a logging crew was finishing their workday. The forest was remote, far from populated areas, surrounded by dense trees and rugged terrain. Travis Walton, a 22-year-old logger, was working with his crew when something extraordinary occurred. The men witnessed a disc-shaped craft hovering above the forest. The object was metallic, luminous, and unlike any conventional aircraft. According to the accounts provided by Walton's co-workers, the craft was approximately 15 to 20 feet in diameter, with a dome on top and a bright glow emanating from its underside. The object hovered silently above the forest clearing where the crew was working. Walton's response to the sighting was immediate and decisive. Rather than fleeing like his co-workers, he approached the object. As he moved towards the craft, a beam of light struck him. According to witnesses, Walton was lifted off the ground by the beam and disappeared. His co-workers, terrified by what they had witnessed, fled the scene. They drove to the nearest town and reported the incident to authorities. A search was organized immediately. Law enforcement personnel, search and rescue teams, and volunteers combed the forest, looking for Walton. The search continued for 5 days without result. Walton had simply vanished. Then on November 10th, 5 days after his disappearance, Walton reappeared. He was found in a nearby town, confused and disoriented. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn on the day of his disappearance, yet he appeared physically unharmed. He claimed to have been aboard an alien spacecraft for the entire 5-day period. According to Walton, his experience had felt much shorter. He estimated that only a few hours had passed. The discrepancy between the 5 days that had elapsed and his perception of a much shorter duration became a central element of the case. Under hypnosis, Walton provided detailed descriptions of his alleged encounter. He described being transported aboard a craft and placed in a chamber where he was examined by humanoid beings. He described the beings as approximately 5 feet tall, with large eyes, small mouths, and grayish skin. He provided detailed descriptions of the craft's interior, describing corridors, chambers, and technology that seemed advanced beyond human capability. He described windows or viewing areas that allowed him to see the landscape below as the craft moved through the air. He described being returned to Earth and released near the town where he was later found. His account was coherent, detailed, and consistent across multiple tellings. The case attracted intense scrutiny from researchers, skeptics, and investigators. The consistency of Walton's story over decades was notable. When interviewed years later, he provided accounts that matched his original testimony. The details remained stable, suggesting either genuine memory of an actual experience or a carefully constructed false narrative maintained over many years. The credibility of multiple independent witnesses, Walton's co-workers who had observed the craft, and the beam of light added weight to the case. These were working men with no obvious motivation to fabricate an elaborate hoax. They had reported the incident to authorities immediately before any media attention or public discussion. Yet skeptics raised significant questions about the case. The timeline presented difficulties. How could Walton have been missing for 5 days, yet perceive only a few hours? While some UFO researchers suggested that the craft's propulsion system might have affected time perception, skeptics argued that this explanation was speculative and unsupported. They suggested alternative explanations. Perhaps Walton had fabricated the story. Perhaps he had experienced a psychological episode. Perhaps the entire incident was a misidentification of conventional phenomena, compounded by group psychology and media sensationalism. Investigators noted inconsistencies in the accounts provided by Walton and his co-workers. The descriptions of the craft varied slightly between witnesses. The timeline of events contained some ambiguities. The physical evidence was limited. There were no photographs of the craft, no material samples from the spacecraft, no physical marks on Walton's body indicating medical examination. The absence of physical evidence troubled skeptics who argued that an actual alien encounter should have left some tangible proof. Supporters countered that the absence of physical evidence didn't prove the encounter hadn't occurred. It simply meant that no evidence had been preserved or recovered. A polygraph examination played a significant role in the case's evaluation. Walton submitted to a polygraph test, and the results suggested that he believed his account to be truthful. However, skeptics noted an important limitation of polygraph evidence. Polygraph tests measure physiological responses, changes in heart rate, blood pressure, and perspiration that typically occur when individuals are consciously lying. A polygraph test cannot distinguish between truth and false belief. If Walton genuinely believed his account, even if it resulted from a psychological episode or false memory, a polygraph test would indicate truthfulness. The test provided evidence that Walton believed his story, but not definitive proof that the story was true. The case divided the UFO research community sharply. Some researchers viewed it as compelling evidence of extraterrestrial contact. The consistency of Walton's testimony, the corroboration from multiple witnesses, and the absence of conventional explanation for his 5-day disappearance seemed to support the extraterrestrial hypothesis. These researchers argued that the case represented one of the strongest pieces of evidence for alien abduction. They viewed skeptical dismissals as reflecting bias rather than rigorous analysis of the evidence. Other researchers and scientists remained unconvinced. They argued that the case contained too many inconsistencies and lacked sufficient physical evidence. They suggested that psychological factors, group psychology, media influence, and the power of suggestion might explain the incident. They noted that Walton's account, while detailed, contained elements consistent with science fiction narratives popular at the time. They suggested that Walton might have unconsciously incorporated elements from popular culture into his recollection of an actual but more mundane experience. They argued that the case, while intriguing, did not meet the evidentiary standards required to establish the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The Walton case also raised questions about the reliability of eyewitness testimony, particularly in unusual circumstances. Psychological research has demonstrated that eyewitness accounts, even from credible observers, can be unreliable. Memory is reconstructive rather than reproductive. We reconstruct memories based on fragments of actual experience, combined with expectations, suggestions, and cultural narratives. When witnesses observe something genuinely unusual and unexpected, the reliability of their testimony may be compromised. The co-workers who witnessed the craft and the beam of light were experiencing something outside their normal experience. Their perception and memory of the event might have been influenced by fear, confusion, and the extraordinary nature of what they believed they were witnessing. The case also demonstrated how media attention and public discussion can influence the development of narratives about unusual experiences. After the incident became public, Walton was interviewed extensively by media UFO researchers and investigators. Each retelling of the story, each question asked, each suggestion made by interviewers could subtly influence his recollection. The power of suggestion is well documented in psychological research. When individuals are asked leading questions or are exposed to suggestions about what they might have experienced, their memories can be modified to incorporate those suggestions. Over time, Walton's account might have been more unconsciously shaped by the questions asked and the narratives proposed by others. Yet the case also demonstrated the genuine difficulty of investigating alleged alien encounters. The Walton case had more corroborating evidence than most UFO sightings: multiple witnesses, a documented disappearance, a polygraph examination, and detailed testimony. Yet even with these elements, the case remained contested and unresolved. The fundamental question: did Travis Walton experience an encounter with extraterrestrial beings, or did he experience something else that his mind interpreted through the lens of UFO narratives? Could not be definitively answered based on available evidence. The Walton case raises fundamental questions about evidence standards in investigating extraordinary claims. How much evidence is sufficient? What types of evidence are most reliable? How do we account for the limitations of human perception and memory? How do we distinguish between genuine anomalies and misinterpretations of conventional phenomena? These questions remain central to UFO research and to broader questions about how science investigates phenomena that resist conventional explanation. As we examine the official government acknowledgment of unexplained aerial phenomena, the shift from decades of denial to cautious admission that something genuinely anomalous exists, we'll see how institutional responses to UFO phenomena have evolved, and how declassified documents have gradually revealed the gap between what governments knew and what they told the public. The Pentagon Papers on UAP, official acknowledgment emerges. The Travis Walton case had demonstrated the challenges of investigating alleged alien encounters. Even extensively documented incidents remained contested and unresolved. Yet throughout the decades following such cases, one constant remained: official government denial. The U.S. government maintained public skepticism toward UFO reports, dismissing them as misidentifications or hoaxes. This posture of denial persisted even as classified investigations continued behind closed doors. Then in the 21st century, this institutional position began to shift. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable, marked by the release of official documents and videos that contradicted decades of public statements. The shift began in 2015 when the Pentagon released videos from Navy pilots showing encounters with objects displaying extraordinary flight characteristics. The videos had been classified, kept from public view for years. Their release represented an acknowledgment that something unusual had been documented. The objects in the footage, designated as unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, moved in ways that seemed inconsistent with known aircraft capabilities. The footage showed objects accelerating, rapidly making turns that would generate forces exceeding the structural limits of conventional aircraft and vanishing from radar detection. The videos were brief, showing only glimpses of the objects, yet they provided visual documentation of phenomena that official sources had previously denied existed. The release of these videos was significant for what it represented institutionally. The Pentagon, the highest military authority in the United States, was officially acknowledging that unexplained aerial phenomena had been encountered and documented. The use of the term unidentified aerial phenomena, rather than UFO, reflected an attempt to frame the discussion in more neutral scientific language. Yet the substance remained the same. The military had documented objects in the airspace that it could not identify or explain. The videos provided visual evidence that something genuinely anomalous had occurred. In 2020, the Department of Defense took the further step of officially releasing 3 videos from Navy pilots, confirming their authenticity. The footage had been recorded by Navy FA-18 Super Hornet aircraft equipped with advanced sensor systems. The videos showed objects moving at speeds and performing maneuvers that seemed to defy conventional aerodynamic principles. One video recorded in 2015 during training exercises off the coast of Virginia showed an object accelerating from a stationary hover to hypersonic speeds in a matter of seconds. The acceleration appeared instantaneous without the gradual increase in velocity that conventional aircraft require. Another video showed an object making a sharp turn while maintaining its velocity, a maneuver that would subject any occupant to lethal G-forces. The pilots who had encountered these objects provided testimony that complemented the video evidence. They described their experiences with measured language that conveyed genuine puzzlement. One pilot stated that he had encountered something I've never seen before. Another pilot described the object's flight characteristics as not consistent with any aircraft I'm familiar with. These were trained military observers accustomed to identifying aircraft and understanding aerodynamic principles. Their testimony suggested genuine anomaly rather than misidentification of conventional phenomena. The pilots' willingness to speak publicly, risking their professional reputations, suggested conviction about what they had witnessed. The most significant institutional acknowledgment came in 2021 when the Director of National Intelligence released an unclassified report on unidentified aerial phenomena. This report represented an official government assessment of UAP sightings and their implications. The report acknowledged that UAP sightings were real and warranted serious investigation. It noted that some phenomena couldn't be explained by conventional means. It acknowledged that UAP might represent advanced foreign technology or genuinely anomalous phenomena. The report stated that the government lacked sufficient data to determine the origin or nature of most UAP sightings, but it affirmed that investigation was necessary. The language of the report was carefully measured, avoiding sensationalism, while acknowledging genuine uncertainty. The report noted that some UAP displayed flight characteristics that seemed inconsistent with known technology. It acknowledged that some sightings involved multiple independent witnesses and radar confirmation. It recognized that the phenomena posed potential national security concerns if they represented advanced foreign technology. Yet the report also maintained appropriate scientific caution, noting that many sightings could be explained through conventional means, and that insufficient data existed to reach definitive conclusions about most cases. This represented a dramatic shift in official posture. For decades, the government had maintained that UFO reports could be explained through conventional means. Project Blue Book had concluded that all sightings were either identified or likely misidentifications. Official statements had dismissed UFO phenomena as the product of misidentification, psychological factors, or hoaxes. Now, the highest levels of government were acknowledging that some phenomena remained genuinely unexplained and warranted investigation. The shift suggested either that phenomena had changed or that institutional assessment had evolved based on accumulated evidence. Following the Director of National Intelligence report, the Pentagon established a formal task force to investigate UAP. The establishment of this task force signaled institutional recognition that unexplained phenomena deserved scientific attention. The task force was tasked with collecting UAP data from military sources, analyzing sightings, and attempting to determine the nature and origin of the phenomena. The creation of a formal investigative body represented a significant departure from the previous posture of denial and dismissal. It acknowledged that UAP investigation was a legitimate military and intelligence function. Declassified documents revealed the extent to which military and intelligence agencies had investigated UAP for decades, contradicting public denials. Documents showed that classified investigations had continued even as official public statements maintained skepticism. Internal memos revealed that investigators had documented cases they couldn't explain. Classified assessments had acknowledged that some phenomena displayed characteristics inconsistent with known technology. The gap between what officials knew and what they told the public had been substantial. The declassification of these documents demonstrated that the denial had been deliberate policy rather than genuine lack of knowledge. The question of why governments had maintained denial for so long became a subject of serious consideration. Several explanations were plausible. First, national security concerns acknowledging that unidentified objects penetrated U.S. airspace might suggest vulnerability in defense systems. Second, institutional credibility, admitting that phenomena existed that science couldn't explain, might undermine confidence in scientific and military institutions. Third, psychological management, maintaining the narrative that everything was explicable and under control, served to prevent public anxiety. Fourth, protection of classified programs. As we've seen, some UFO sightings resulted from classified aircraft development, and acknowledging investigation of UFO phenomena might reveal the existence of classified programs. The shift from denial to acknowledgment raised new questions. If the phenomena had remained constant over decades, why had institutional assessment changed? One possibility was that accumulated evidence had become too substantial to deny. The video evidence from Navy pilots recorded with advanced sensor systems and confirmed by multiple witnesses provided documentation that was difficult to dismiss. The consistency of reports from credible observers across many decades suggested genuine phenomena rather than isolated misidentifications. Another possibility was that institutional calculation had shifted. Perhaps officials had concluded that acknowledging UAP investigation was less damaging to institutional credibility than continuing to deny what classified investigations had documented. The Pentagon's acknowledgment also reflected broader changes in how institutions approach scientific investigation. In previous decades, the official position had been that UFO phenomena were scientifically unproductive, that investigation was unlikely to yield meaningful results. This position had justified dismissal and denial. By the 21st century, institutional thinking had evolved. Officials recognized that systematic investigation of anomalous phenomena, even phenomena that seemed implausible, could yield valuable information. The shift reflected growing recognition that science should investigate genuine anomalies rather than dismissing them based on prior assumptions about what is possible. The acknowledgement also raised questions about what would come next. If the government acknowledged that UAP existed and warranted investigation, what would investigation reveal? Would declassified findings eventually explain the phenomena? Would investigation confirm that some phenomena represented advanced foreign technology? Would investigation provide evidence supporting the extraterrestrial hypothesis? Or would investigation simply accumulate more data about phenomena that remained genuinely anomalous? The answers to these questions would depend on what investigation actually discovered. The Pentagon's shift from denial to cautious acknowledgment represents a transformation in how institutions address unexplained phenomena. The question is no longer whether UAP exist. Official government sources now acknowledge that they do. The question has shifted to what they represent and why governments previously denied their investigation. The answers to these questions may reshape our understanding of what the government knows about unexplained aerial phenomena and what it has been concealing from the public. As we examine the physical and electromagnetic effects reported during UFO encounters, phenomena that might provide scientific pathways to understanding what these objects are, we'll explore evidence that extends beyond eyewitness testimony to include measurable effects on equipment and environment. The Tic-Tac Encounter, modern pilot testimony and radar evidence. The Pentagon's official acknowledgment of UAP represented a significant institutional shift, yet it raised questions about what specific incidents had prompted this change. Among the most significant of these incidents was an encounter that occurred nearly 2 decades before official acknowledgement, an encounter that would eventually become the most thoroughly documented modern UFO sighting. On November 14, 2004, off the coast of San Diego, California, pilots aboard the USS Nimitz carrier strike group encountered an object that would challenge their understanding of what was possible in the skies above American waters. Commander David Fravor was a highly experienced Navy pilot with thousands of hours of flight time. On that November morning, and his fellow pilots were conducting routine training exercises. The weather was clear visibility excellent. Fravor was flying an FA-18 Super Hornet, one of the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. His aircraft was equipped with sophisticated sensor systems, radar, and weapons targeting technology. He was trained to identify aircraft, understand aerodynamic principles, and recognize the capabilities and limitations of known aircraft. Radar operators aboard the USS Nimitz were monitoring the airspace tracking aircraft movements and detecting any unidentified targets. Then radar operators detected something unusual. An unidentified target appeared on their screens. The object was moving in ways that seemed inconsistent with conventional aircraft. It was hovering stationary, then accelerating rapidly. The radar operators reported the contact to the pilots. Fravor and his wingman were directed to investigate. They climbed to intercept the object, expecting to encounter either a conventional aircraft or perhaps a weather balloon. What they encountered instead defied conventional explanation. The object, which Fravor would later describe as resembling a Tic-Tac candy, displayed characteristics impossible for known aircraft. It was approximately 40 to 50 feet in length, with a smooth, featureless surface. There were no visible wings, no visible propulsion system, no visible means of flight. The object hovered motionless in the air. Fravor approached cautiously, attempting to get a closer look. As he approached, the object suddenly accelerated. The acceleration was instantaneous without the gradual increase in velocity that conventional aircraft require. The object moved from hovering to hypersonic speeds in a manner that seemed to defy the laws of physics as Fravor understood them. Fravor attempted to intercept the object, to pursue it, and attempt to determine what it was. But the object outmaneuvered his FA-18 Super Hornet with ease. The FA-18 is one of the most maneuverable fighter aircraft in existence, capable of extraordinary turns and accelerations. Yet the Tic-Tac object moved with capabilities that exceeded the FA-18's performance envelope. The encounter lasted approximately 5 minutes. During that time, Fravor pursued the object, attempting to close the distance, but the object maintained its lead. It seemed to respond to Fravor's movements, suggesting either intelligent control or autonomous systems capable of detecting and responding to threats. What made this encounter particularly significant was the independent verification of the object's presence. Multiple radar systems tracked the object simultaneously. Radar operators aboard the USS Nimitz detected the object on their screens. The object was not a radar ghost or a sensor artifact. Multiple independent verification systems confirmed that something physical was present in the airspace. The radar data provided objective documentation that the encounter was real, that something genuinely anomalous had occurred. This radar confirmation distinguished the Tic-Tac encounter from purely anecdotal accounts. The pilot's testimony was corroborated by electronic systems that couldn't be influenced by psychological factors or misperception. Lieutenant Alex Dietrich, another pilot involved in the encounter, provided consistent testimony about the incident. She described the object in terms similar to Fravor's account. She described its unusual shape, its apparent lack of propulsion system, its extraordinary flight characteristics. She described the encounter as genuinely puzzling, as something that didn't match her training or experience. Her account corroborating Fravor's suggested that both pilots had witnessed the same phenomenon and interpreted it similarly. The consistency between independent observers strengthened the credibility of their testimony. The incident was documented through official military channels. Detailed reports were filed by trained observers. The encounter was recorded in official Navy records. The documentation was comprehensive and thorough, following standard military procedures for reporting unusual incidents. For years, the Navy kept the encounter classified. The incident was not public knowledge. It was restricted to military and intelligence personnel with appropriate security clearances. The classification suggested that military authorities considered the incident significant enough to warrant secrecy. In 2015, the footage from the encounter was released publicly. The video showed the Tic-Tac object moving across the screen, tracked by the aircraft's sensor systems. The footage was brief, showing only glimpses of the object, yet it provided visual documentation of the encounter. The release of the video represented an acknowledgment that something unusual had been documented. In 2017, the New York Times published a comprehensive investigation of the incident, bringing widespread public attention to the encounter. The Times article featured interviews with Fravor and Dietrich, who provided detailed accounts of their experience. The article also included analysis from military and aviation experts who attempted to explain the encounter. Fravor and Dietrich, both respected military officers, with impeccable credentials, provided consistent testimony about the incident. They were not anonymous witnesses or individuals with questionable credibility. They were trained military professionals whose careers depended on accurate observation and truthful reporting. Their willingness to speak publicly years after the incident suggested genuine conviction about what they had witnessed. They faced potential ridicule and skepticism, yet they chose to speak. This choice suggested that their conviction about the encounter's reality outweighed the professional risks of public discussion. The accounts provided by Fravor and Dietrich were corroborated by radar operators and electronic systems. The radar data confirmed that an object had been present in the airspace. The sensor systems aboard the aircraft had tracked the object. The electronic documentation was objective and verifiable. It couldn't be explained through psychological factors or misperception. The object had been detected by multiple independent systems, all confirming the same basic facts. Something was present in the airspace, something that moved in ways inconsistent with known aircraft capabilities. The encounter couldn't be explained as a weather balloon. Weather balloons don't hover motionless, don't accelerate to hypersonic speeds, don't respond to the movements of pursuing aircraft. The encounter couldn't be explained as a drone. Drone technology, even advanced drone technology, doesn't possess the capabilities demonstrated by the Tic-Tac object. The encounter couldn't be explained as a conventional aircraft. No known aircraft can perform the maneuvers observed. No known aircraft can accelerate from hover to hypersonic speeds instantaneously. No known aircraft can outmaneuver an F/A-18 Super Hornet. Fravor stated explicitly that the object's capabilities exceeded anything in the U.S. military arsenal. This statement carried particular weight. Fravor, as a military pilot, would be familiar with classified military aircraft. He would know the capabilities of advanced American aircraft. His assertion that the Tic-Tac object exceeded American capabilities suggested either that the object represented foreign technology or that it represented something genuinely anomalous. The possibility of foreign technology raised national security concerns. The possibility of anomalous phenomena raised questions about the nature of the object and its origin. The Tic-Tac encounter represents modern documentation of unexplained phenomena with multiple independent verification systems. Unlike historical UFO sightings that relied on eyewitness testimony alone, the Tic-Tac encounter involved advanced sensor systems, radar confirmation, and video documentation. The encounter occurred in the 21st century when technology was sophisticated enough to provide objective documentation. The incident demonstrated that even with advanced technology and trained observers, some aerial phenomena remain genuinely anomalous. The encounter couldn't be dismissed as a misidentification or a product of human perception. Multiple independent systems confirmed that something unusual had occurred. The significance of the Tic-Tac encounter lies in its documentation and verification. The incident provided evidence that unexplained aerial phenomena exist in contemporary times. It demonstrated that such phenomena can be encountered by trained military observers operating advanced aircraft and sensor systems. It showed that official military and intelligence agencies take such phenomena seriously enough to investigate and document them. The encounter provided a modern, well-documented case that couldn't be easily dismissed or explained away through conventional means. The Tic-Tac encounter also raised questions about what other incidents might have occurred without public knowledge. If the Navy had encountered this object in 2004 and kept it classified for over a decade, how many other encounters might have occurred without public disclosure? How many incidents might remain classified? The encounter suggested that the public record of UFO phenomena represented only a fraction of actual incidents. The classified incidents might outnumber public reports by a substantial margin. The true scope of unexplained aerial phenomena might be far greater than public awareness suggested. As we examine the physical and electromagnetic effects reported during UFO encounters, phenomena that extend beyond visual observation to include measurable impacts on equipment and environment, we'll explore evidence that might provide scientific pathways to understanding what these objects are and how they operate. Electromagnetic effects and physical evidence. What the craft leave behind. The Tic-Tac encounter had provided visual and radar documentation of an anomalous object, yet it left no physical evidence that investigators could examine. The object had departed, leaving only testimony and sensor data. Yet many UFO encounters include reports of physical effects that extend beyond observation. Electromagnetic interference with vehicles and electronic systems radiation. Burns on witnesses and material evidence left at landing sites. These physical effects offer potential bridges between subjective observation and objective measurement, providing evidence that might be analyzed scientifically. In 1964, in Socorro, New Mexico, police officer Lonnie Zamora witnessed a craft landing near the town. Zamora was patrolling in his police vehicle when he observed an unusual object descending toward the ground. He stopped his vehicle and approached the object on foot. The craft was egg-shaped or oval, approximately 15 feet in length, with a metallic appearance. Zamora observed the object directly watching it hover above the ground before ascending and departing. The encounter lasted several minutes. What distinguished this case from purely observational accounts was the physical evidence that remained after the object's departure. Zamora reported electromagnetic effects on his patrol car. The vehicle's radio malfunctioned during the encounter. Electronic systems behaved erratically. These effects suggested that the object was generating electromagnetic fields of significant strength. After the object departed, Zamora examined the landing site. Investigators found burn marks on the ground where the craft had hovered. The burn marks were circular or oval in shape, consistent with the object's apparent dimensions. The ground showed evidence of exposure to extreme heat. Soil samples from the landing site were collected and analyzed. Analysis suggested exposure to temperatures far exceeding what conventional explanations could account for. The Socorro case raised important questions about the physical effects of UFO encounters. If the object was generating electromagnetic fields strong enough to interfere with vehicle electronics, what was the source of these fields? What technology could produce such effects? Conventional aircraft don't generate electromagnetic fields of sufficient strength to disable vehicle electronics. The effects suggested either advanced human technology or something genuinely anomalous. The burn marks on the ground suggested that the object was generating or radiating heat. Yet the object had no visible propulsion system, no visible exhaust, no conventional means of generating thrust or heat. The Rendlesham Forest incident in 1980 provided another documented case of physical effects. Multiple military witnesses observed a craft in Suffolk, England, near the RAF Bentwaters Air Base. The witnesses were trained military personnel with credible backgrounds. They reported electromagnetic effects on their equipment. Radiation readings were taken at the landing site, showing elevated levels. Physical evidence included burn marks on trees and soil samples showing anomalous properties. The incident was documented through official military channels. Declassified documents revealed that military authorities took the incident seriously enough to conduct investigations and file detailed reports. The Rendlesham Forest witnesses described the craft's appearance in terms similar to other UFO reports. They described a structured object with geometric precision. They reported that the object seemed to emit light and energy. They described electromagnetic effects on their equipment, compasses malfunctioning, electronic devices failing. The radiation readings suggested exposure to energy sources beyond conventional explanation. The burn marks on trees were consistent with exposure to intense heat or radiation. The physical evidence at the landing site provided objective documentation that something unusual had occurred. In the Hessdalen Valley of Norway, residents reported recurring sightings of luminous objects accompanied by electromagnetic disturbances. The valley became known as a hotspot for UFO activity. Scientists established monitoring stations in the region to document the phenomena. Over years of observation, researchers documented phenomena showing characteristics inconsistent with conventional explanations. The luminous objects displayed flight characteristics similar to those described in other UFO reports. They moved at extraordinary speeds, made impossible turns, and seemed to respond to observer movements. The electromagnetic disturbances accompanied the sightings, suggesting that the objects were generating electromagnetic fields. The consistency of electromagnetic effects across different encounters and locations is notable. In Socorro, electromagnetic interference affected vehicle electronics. In Rendlesham Forest, electromagnetic effects were documented on military equipment. In Hessdalen Valley, electromagnetic disturbances accompanied sightings. The pattern suggests either a genuine phenomenon or a widespread pattern of similar misidentifications. If the effects resulted from misidentification, it would be remarkable that so many independent observers reported similar electromagnetic phenomena. The consistency suggests either that a genuine phenomenon exists, or that a common psychological or perceptual factor influences how observers interpret and report their experiences. Some researchers propose that advanced propulsion systems might generate electromagnetic fields that interfere with electronics and affect biological tissue. If UFO craft utilize propulsion systems fundamentally different from conventional aircraft, they might operate on principles involving electromagnetic fields or exotic energy sources. Such systems could generate electromagnetic radiation as a byproduct of their operation. This radiation could interfere with electronic systems and potentially affect biological organisms. The hypothesis is speculative, but it provides a plausible mechanism linking the observed effects to the craft's operation. Other researchers suggest that reported effects result from misidentification or psychological factors. They argue that witnesses might misinterpret natural phenomena as the electromagnetic effects. They suggest that psychological factors, expectation, suggestion, and the power of suggestion might influence how witnesses interpret equipment malfunctions. They note that electronic equipment can malfunction for many reasons, and that attributing malfunctions to UFO encounters might reflect confirmation bias rather than genuine causation. They argue that the absence of definitive physical evidence, no recovered materials, no authenticated radiation samples, suggests that the reported effects might be misinterpretations rather than genuine phenomena. The challenge lies in distinguishing genuine physical effects from misinterpretation or contamination of evidence. Physical evidence from UFO encounters is rare. Material samples are seldom recovered. Radiation readings are difficult to verify without proper documentation and chain of custody. Burn marks on ground or trees can result from many causes, and attributing them to UFO encounters requires careful analysis to rule out conventional explanations. The scientific investigation of alleged physical effects requires rigorous methodology, proper documentation, and careful analysis to distinguish genuine anomalies from conventional phenomena or measurement errors. Yet the consistency of reported effects across different encounters and locations suggests that something genuine might be occurring. If electromagnetic interference, radiation effects, and burn marks resulted from misidentification or psychological factors, it would be surprising that so many independent observers reported similar effects. The pattern suggests either that a genuine phenomenon produces these effects, or that a common factor influences how observers interpret and report their experiences. The possibility that a genuine phenomenon exists makes investigation worthwhile, despite the challenges of distinguishing genuine effects from misinterpretation. Physical effects provide potential bridges between subjective observation and objective measurement. Eyewitness testimony is subjective and inherently limited by human perception. Yet physical effects, electromagnetic interference, radiation readings, burn marks can be measured and documented objectively. If electromagnetic phenomena can be reliably documented and analyzed, they might offer scientific pathways to understanding unexplained encounters. Researchers could establish monitoring stations in areas where UFO sightings are reported equipped with instruments to detect electromagnetic radiation, measure radiation levels, and document physical effects. Systematic collection of such data might reveal patterns or characteristics that could illuminate the nature of the phenomena. The investigation of physical effects also raises questions about what evidence would be sufficient to establish the reality of UFO phenomena. If electromagnetic interference radiation effects and burn marks are genuine, what additional evidence would be required? If material samples were recovered and analyzed, what would constitute proof of extraterrestrial origin? How would scientists distinguish between advanced human technology and genuinely anomalous phenomena? These questions reflect deeper issues about evidence standards and how science evaluates extraordinary claims. The physical effects reported in UFO encounters represent one avenue for scientific investigation. Rather than relying solely on eyewitness testimony, researchers can focus on measurable phenomena. Electromagnetic radiation can be detected and measured. Radiation levels can be documented. Burn marks can be analyzed for composition and characteristics. Soil samples can be examined for anomalous properties. This approach provides objective data that can be analyzed independently of witness testimony. If consistent patterns emerge across multiple incidents and locations, they might provide evidence that something genuine is occurring. As we examine how governments have managed information about UFO phenomena, the deliberate strategies employed to control public perception, and the reasons institutions have maintained secrecy, we'll explore the gap between what officials know and what they tell the public, and how this gap has shaped public understanding of unexplained phenomena. The cover-up question: why governments deny and declassify? The physical effects documented in UFO encounters provided evidence that something genuine was occurring. Yet despite this evidence, governments maintained official denial for decades. Throughout the Cold War, the U.S. government presented a contradiction to the public official skepticism toward UFO reports, combined with intensive classified investigation. This paradox raises fundamental questions about institutional motivation. Why would governments investigate phenomena they publicly claim didn't warrant investigation? Why maintain denial while conducting secret studies? The answers reveal how institutions balance competing priorities: national security, institutional credibility, and public confidence. Several factors likely contributed to the denial strategy. First, national security concerns shaped official policy. Acknowledging that unidentified objects penetrated U.S. airspace would suggest vulnerability in American defense systems. During the Cold War, maintaining the appearance of military superiority was crucial to deterrent strategy. Admitting that unknown objects moved through American airspace undetected would undermine confidence in military capabilities. It would suggest that defense systems couldn't identify or intercept unknown intruders. This implication was strategically damaging. Rather than acknowledge the vulnerability, officials maintained the position that all sightings could be explained through conventional means. The denial served to preserve the narrative of military control and security. Second, institutional credibility influenced the denial strategy. Admitting that phenomena existed that science couldn't explain would undermine confidence in scientific institutions. Science is built on the principle that natural phenomena can be understood through investigation and analysis. If scientists acknowledged phenomena that resisted explanation, it would suggest limitations in scientific understanding. It would imply that some aspects of reality might be fundamentally beyond scientific investigation. This implication troubled scientific institutions. Maintaining the position that all phenomena could be explained through conventional means preserved the narrative of scientific authority and capability. Denial served to protect institutional credibility. Third, psychological management motivated the denial strategy. Public anxiety about unexplained phenomena could have social consequences. If the public believed that unknown objects were penetrating American airspace, panic might result. If the public believed that extraterrestrial beings were visiting Earth, social disruption might occur. Religious institutions might experience challenges to their authority. Government institutions might face questions about their ability to protect citizens. Maintaining the narrative that everything was explicable and under control served to prevent public anxiety. Denial was a tool for psychological management designed to maintain public confidence in institutions and social stability. Declassified documents reveal a fourth factor: officials deliberately encouraged UFO rumors to obscure classified aircraft development. This strategy was remarkably effective. If the public attributed sightings to extraterrestrial craft, they wouldn't suspect advanced human technology. The military could test classified aircraft in remote areas, and when observers reported sightings, officials could dismiss them as UFO reports rather than acknowledging classified programs. This strategy killed two birds with one stone. It protected classified aircraft development while simultaneously appearing to investigate UFO phenomena. The public's fascination with extraterrestrial contact served military interests by directing attention away from classified programs. This deliberate encouragement of UFO rumors created lasting credibility gaps. The public became aware that officials were simultaneously dismissing UFO reports and investigating them. The contradiction was obvious. If UFO reports were worthless, why investigate them if they warranted investigation? Why dismiss them publicly? The gap between official statements and actual behavior generated suspicion. The public began to suspect that officials were lying, that they knew more than they were revealing. This suspicion, once generated, persisted. Even when officials eventually acknowledged UAP investigation, many observers remained skeptical, believing that institutions were still concealing information. By the 21st century, institutional calculus shifted. Continued denial became less tenable as evidence accumulated and technology improved. Video evidence from Navy pilots recorded with advanced sensor systems and confirmed by multiple witnesses was difficult to dismiss. The consistency of reports from credible observers across many decades suggested genuine phenomena rather than isolated misidentifications. The accumulation of declassified documents revealing decades of classified investigation contradicted the official position that UFO phenomena didn't warrant serious study. Maintaining denial in the face of this evidence became increasingly difficult. Releasing information about UAP encounters allowed institutions to acknowledge phenomena while maintaining control over interpretation. The Pentagon's strategy was sophisticated. Rather than admitting that the government had been lying, officials reframed the discussion. They acknowledged that UAP existed and warranted investigation. They presented this acknowledgement as a new development, suggesting that the phenomena were recent rather than long-standing. They framed UAP as a national security concern, potentially representing advanced foreign technology. This framing preserved institutional authority while appearing transparent. The Pentagon's acknowledgement of UAP represents a calculated shift in strategy. Admitting that unexplained phenomena exist allows institutions to appear credible and honest, yet framing them as potential foreign technology rather than extraterrestrial contact preserves institutional control over interpretation. If UAP represented advanced foreign technology, the military and intelligence communities would be the appropriate institutions to investigate and manage the phenomena. If UAP represented extraterrestrial contact, the implications would extend beyond military and intelligence concerns to broader questions about humanity's place in the cosmos. By framing UAP as a national security issue, institutions maintained their authority to investigate and control information about the phenomena. This approach also addresses the credibility gap created by decades of denial. By acknowledging investigation and releasing some information, institutions appear more transparent. They can claim that they're taking UAP seriously and investigating systematically. Yet they maintain control over what information is released and how it's interpreted. They can continue to classify information deemed sensitive to national security. They can control the narrative about what UAP represent and what implications they have. The shift from denial to cautious acknowledgement represents a new strategy for managing information about phenomena institutions still don't fully understand. The question remains, is the current transparency genuine, or does it represent a new strategy for managing information? The answer likely involves elements of both. Institutions may genuinely recognize that continued denial is untenable. The evidence is too substantial, the credibility gap too large. Yet institutions also recognize that acknowledging certain truths could create problems. Admitting that decades of denial were deliberate policy would damage institutional credibility. Acknowledging that phenomena exist that science can't explain would undermine scientific authority. Admitting that extraterrestrial contact might have occurred would raise profound questions about institutional competence and honesty. The current strategy of cautious acknowledgment allows institutions to navigate these challenges. They acknowledge phenomena while maintaining interpretive control. They release some information while classifying other information as sensitive. They appear transparent while protecting institutional interests. This strategy may be more sustainable than continued denial, yet it doesn't fully address the credibility gap or answer fundamental questions about what UAP represent. Government secrecy regarding UFO phenomena reflects institutional priorities that extend beyond simple truth-telling. Institutions must balance transparency with national security concerns. They must maintain public confidence while acknowledging phenomena that challenge conventional understanding. They must preserve institutional credibility while admitting past errors or deceptions. These competing priorities create complex institutional dynamics that shape how governments respond to UFO phenomena. Understanding these priorities requires examining how institutions function. Institutions are not monolithic entities seeking truth above all else. They are complex organizations with multiple stakeholders, competing interests, and institutional survival as a primary concern. When institutional survival conflicts with transparency, institutions typically prioritize survival. When national security concerns conflict with public disclosure, institutions typically prioritize security. When institutional credibility conflicts with honest acknowledgment of past deception, institutions typically prioritize credibility preservation. This doesn't mean that institutions are uniformly dishonest, or that all officials are engaged in deliberate deception. Many individuals within institutions are genuinely committed to truth and transparency. Yet they operate within institutional constraints that limit what they can reveal and how they can frame information. The result is a complex dance between transparency and secrecy, acknowledgment, and denial, truth, and managed information. As we examine how scientific skepticism and psychological factors influence how people interpret UFO phenomena, how the human mind processes unusual experiences, and how scientific methodology approaches extraordinary claims, we'll explore the intersection of subjective experience and objective investigation. Scientific skepticism and the burden of proof. Evaluating extraordinary claims. The institutional strategies for managing UFO information reveal how organizations balance competing priorities. Yet beneath these institutional dynamics lies a deeper question: how should science approach claims about phenomena that seem to contradict established understanding? The scientific community has traditionally approached UFO claims with skepticism, applying a principle that has served science well for centuries. This principle states that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The logic is straightforward: if phenomena contradict established understanding of physics and technology, the evidence supporting such phenomena must be correspondingly rigorous and compelling. This standard is philosophically sound. Science progresses through the accumulation of evidence that either confirms or challenges existing theories. When a claim contradicts well-established principles, skepticism is warranted. If someone claims that objects can move faster than light, violating Einstein's theory of relativity, extraordinary evidence would be required to overturn a theory supported by decades of experimental confirmation. If someone claims that consciousness can influence physical reality, through intention alone, extraordinary evidence would be required to establish a phenomenon that contradicts our understanding of physics and neuroscience. The principle of demanding extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims protects science from being derailed by every speculative idea. Yet applying this standard to UFO research creates significant methodological challenges. The first challenge involves the inherent difficulty of studying UFO phenomena systematically. UFO sightings are unpredictable events. They occur randomly, often in remote locations without warning. Scientists cannot schedule a UFO sighting for observation. They cannot control the conditions under which sightings occur. They cannot reproduce the phenomena in laboratory settings. This unpredictability makes systematic study difficult. The scientific method relies on reproducibility, the ability to repeat observations under controlled conditions. When phenomena cannot be reproduced or predicted, applying standard scientific methodology becomes problematic. The second challenge involves the reliability of eyewitness testimony. While eyewitness accounts are valuable, psychological research has demonstrated that human perception and memory are notoriously unreliable, particularly for unusual phenomena. Witnesses may misidentify conventional objects, especially when observing something unexpected. Memory is reconstructive rather than reproductive. We reconstruct memories based on fragments of actual experience, combined with expectations, suggestions, and cultural narratives. When witnesses observe something genuinely unusual, their perception and memory may be compromised by fear, confusion, and the extraordinary nature of what they believe they're witnessing. Over time, details may be unconsciously embellished or modified. The power of suggestion is well documented. When individuals are asked leading questions or exposed to suggestions about what they might have experienced, their memories can be modified to incorporate those suggestions. The third challenge involves the scarcity of physical evidence. Physical evidence would be valuable for scientific investigation. Material samples could be analyzed chemically and physically. Radiation samples could be measured and documented. Burn marks could be examined for composition and characteristics. Yet physical evidence from UFO encounters is rare. Material samples are seldom recovered. When evidence is recovered, chain of custody is often unclear. Contamination is possible. The evidence may be lost or destroyed before scientific analysis. Without reliable physical evidence, investigation must rely on testimony and indirect observations, neither of which meets the standard of extraordinary evidence. The scientific approach demands reproducibility. Phenomena that cannot be reliably reproduced in controlled settings resist investigation through conventional scientific methodology. This requirement makes sense for phenomena that occur regularly and predictably. Yet this standard may be inappropriately applied to rare, unpredictable events. Consider astronomy, a field that investigates phenomena that cannot be reproduced in laboratories. Astronomers study supernovae, black holes, and distant galaxies. They cannot create a supernova in a laboratory to study it. They cannot reproduce the conditions of a black hole. Yet astronomy is recognized as a rigorous science. Astronomers have developed methods for investigating unique events, systematic observation pattern analysis, statistical methods, and careful evaluation of evidence. Some UFO researchers argue that UFO phenomena warrant similar approaches. They propose systematic collection of data from multiple sources, statistical analysis of patterns across different sightings, and careful evaluation of evidence rather than dismissal based on the inability to reproduce phenomena. They argue that if consistent patterns emerge across independent observations, similar descriptions from different witnesses, similar electromagnetic effects, similar physical evidence, these patterns might provide evidence that something genuine is occurring. They suggest that the scientific investigation of UFO phenomena should proceed not by demanding reproducibility in laboratory settings, but by applying the methodologies that astronomy and other observational sciences use to investigate rare, unpredictable phenomena. Other researchers and scientists contend that without reproducible evidence or theoretical frameworks explaining the phenomena, scientific investigation is premature. They argue that science requires either reproducible evidence or a theoretical framework that explains how the phenomena could occur. Without either, investigation cannot proceed scientifically. They note that many UFO claims lack physical evidence and rely on testimony that may be unreliable. They argue that applying scientific methodology to such claims would be inappropriate. They suggest that investigation should continue, but that scientific conclusions should not be drawn until more rigorous evidence is available. This debate reflects genuine philosophical differences about evidence standards and the relationship between skepticism and open-mindedness. Skepticism is essential to science. It protects against accepting claims without adequate evidence. Yet excessive skepticism can prevent investigation of phenomena that deserve study. Open-mindedness is valuable. It allows scientists to consider possibilities that challenge established understanding. Yet uncritical open-mindedness can lead to accepting claims without adequate evidence. The challenge lies in finding the appropriate balance. Consider how science has approached other phenomena that initially seemed implausible. Meteorites were once dismissed by scientists as impossible rocks couldn't fall from the sky. Yet systematic collection of meteorite samples and careful analysis eventually established that meteorites were real. Plate tectonics was initially rejected by mainstream geology, yet evidence accumulated that eventually convinced the scientific community. Prions, infectious agents composed entirely of protein, were initially considered impossible. Infectious agents were thought to require nucleic acids. Yet evidence eventually established that prions exist and cause disease. In each case, phenomena that seemed implausible or contradicted established understanding were eventually accepted based on accumulating evidence. Yet these examples also demonstrate that acceptance of new phenomena requires substantial evidence. Meteorites were accepted when multiple samples were collected and analyzed. Plate tectonics was accepted when multiple lines of evidence converged. Prions were accepted when rigorous experiments demonstrated their properties. The acceptance of new phenomena in science typically requires more than anecdotal testimony or isolated observations. It requires systematic evidence, reproducible findings, or theoretical frameworks that explain how the phenomena could occur. The challenge with UFO phenomena is that they have not yet produced the level of evidence that typically leads to scientific acceptance. No authenticated material samples from UFO craft exist. No reproducible experiments demonstrate UFO phenomena. No theoretical framework explains how UFO craft could operate. The evidence consists largely of testimony photographs and radar data, all of which can be explained through conventional means in most cases. The small percentage of cases that resist conventional explanation remain genuinely anomalous. But anomaly is not the same as evidence for extraterrestrial contact or genuinely impossible phenomena. Yet the absence of definitive evidence doesn't necessarily mean that investigation is unwarranted. Science investigates many phenomena that lack definitive evidence. The investigation of dark matter and dark energy, which constitute most of the universe, proceeds despite the absence of direct evidence. Scientists investigate the nature of consciousness, despite lacking complete understanding. The investigation of rare phenomena, even phenomena that resist conventional explanation, can be scientifically valuable. Such investigation might reveal new phenomena, new principles, or new understanding. The scientific evaluation of UFO claims reveals tensions between rigorous methodology and the investigation of genuinely anomalous phenomena. The standard of extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims is sound, yet it may need to be applied thoughtfully to rare, unpredictable phenomena. The requirement for reproducibility is valuable for most scientific investigation, yet it may be inappropriately applied to unique events. The reliance on eyewitness testimony is problematic, yet dismissing all testimony without consideration is also problematic. The scarcity of physical evidence is troubling, yet the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. These tensions reflect deeper questions about how science should approach phenomena that resist conventional investigation. Should science maintain strict standards that limit investigation to phenomena that can be reproduced and measured directly? Or should science develop methodologies for investigating rare, unpredictable phenomena using the approaches that observational sciences like astronomy employ? Should science maintain skepticism toward claims that contradict established understanding? Or should science remain open to possibilities that challenge established understanding? These questions don't have simple answers. They reflect genuine philosophical differences about the nature of science and the appropriate standards for scientific investigation. As we examine how psychological factors and misidentification explain many UFO reports, how the human mind interprets unusual experiences, and how cognitive biases shape perception, we'll explore the psychological mechanisms that contribute to UFO phenomena and the challenge of distinguishing genuine anomalies from psychological factors. Psychological factors and misidentification, the rational explanations. The scientific evaluation of UFO claims requires understanding not only what phenomena might represent, but also how human perception and psychology contribute to UFO reports. A substantial portion of UFO sightings can be explained through psychological and perceptual factors. Understanding these factors is essential for evaluating UFO claims and distinguishing between genuine anomalies and misidentifications. The human brain is remarkably susceptible to misidentification, particularly when observing unusual phenomena in low-light conditions or unfamiliar contexts. This susceptibility reflects how human perception actually works, not as a camera recording objective reality, but as an active process of interpretation shaped by expectation, context, and prior experience. Celestial objects account for many UFO reports. Venus, the brightest object in the night sky after the moon, is frequently misidentified as a UFO. Jupiter, Saturn, and other bright planets are similarly misidentified. These celestial objects can appear to move or change position as the observer's perspective changes, or as atmospheric conditions shift. In low-light conditions or when observed without context, bright celestial objects can appear unusual or anomalous. Observers unfamiliar with astronomy might interpret these objects as something extraordinary. The misidentification is understandable. A bright object moving across the night sky, observed without context, could reasonably be interpreted as something unusual. Atmospheric phenomena account for additional UFO sightings. Ball lightning, a rare atmospheric phenomenon consisting of luminous spheres of plasma, has been reported for centuries. Lenticular clouds, lens-shaped clouds that form around mountains or in certain atmospheric conditions, can appear unusual or structured. Optical illusions created by atmospheric layers, such as mirages or light refraction effects, can create the appearance of objects in the sky. Noctilucent clouds, which form at very high altitudes and can appear luminous at twilight, have been misidentified as UFOs. These atmospheric phenomena are genuine. They occur in nature and can be observed. Yet they are not extraterrestrial craft or genuinely anomalous phenomena. They are natural phenomena that observers might misinterpret without proper context or understanding. Aircraft, particularly military jets with unusual lighting configurations, are regularly reported as UFOs. Military aircraft often have distinctive lighting patterns designed for navigation and identification. When observed from certain angles or in low-light conditions, these lighting patterns can appear unusual. Stealth aircraft with their distinctive angular shapes can appear unlike conventional aircraft. Helicopters, particularly when observed from a distance or at night, can appear unusual. Drones, especially military or experimental drones, can display flight characteristics that seem anomalous to observers unfamiliar with drone technology. The misidentification of aircraft as UFOs is common and understandable. Modern aircraft possess capabilities and appearances that might seem extraordinary to observers unfamiliar with aviation technology. Psychological factors amplify misidentification. Expectation shapes perception in powerful ways. Individuals primed to see UFOs, those who have read about UFO sightings, watched UFO documentaries, or discussed UFO phenomena, are more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as extraterrestrial craft. This effect is well documented in psychological research. When individuals expect to see something, they are more likely to perceive it, even when the stimulus is ambiguous. A bright light in the sky might be interpreted as a UFO by someone expecting to see a UFO, while the same light might be interpreted as an aircraft or celestial object by someone without that expectation. Cognitive biases influence how observers remember and report their experiences. Confirmation bias leads observers to remember details that confirm their interpretation, while forgetting contradictory information. If an observer interprets an ambiguous light as a UFO, they will remember details that support this interpretation: unusual movement, strange appearance, lack of conventional explanation, while forgetting details that contradict it. Availability bias leads observers to overestimate the frequency of UFO sightings, because memorable sightings are more readily recalled than the thousands of ordinary nights without sightings. Memory distortion occurs over time, particularly when memories are repeatedly discussed, or when individuals are exposed to suggestions about what they might have seen. Social influence affects reporting and memory. Groups discussing sightings often develop collective narratives that diverge from individual observations. When multiple people witness an event and then discuss it, their individual memories can be influenced by the group discussion. Details from one person's account can be incorporated into another person's memory. The group develops a shared narrative that may differ from what any individual actually observed. This phenomenon, called social contagion of memory, is well documented in psychological research. It explains why multiple witnesses to the same event sometimes provide accounts that are more similar than would be expected if they had observed independently. Sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations account for many abduction reports. Sleep paralysis occurs during the transition between sleep and wakefulness. During this state, the brain is partially awake while the body remains in the state of muscle atonia that occurs during REM sleep. The result is a conscious experience of being unable to move. This state is often accompanied by hallucinations, vivid perceptions of entities, beings, or presences in the room. Individuals experiencing sleep paralysis often report sensing a malevolent presence, feeling pressure on their chest, or perceiving humanoid figures. These experiences feel intensely real to those experiencing them. The hallucinations are vivid and emotionally powerful, yet they result from neurological processes occurring during the sleep-wake transition rather than external events. Hypnagogic hallucinations are vivid hallucinations that occur during the transition into sleep. Hypnopompic hallucinations occur during the transition from sleep to wakefulness. These hallucinations can be visual, auditory, or tactile. They can involve the complex scenarios or interactions with perceived entities. To the person experiencing them, these hallucinations feel real. They seem to involve external events and entities, yet they result from the brain's activity during the sleep-wake transition. The brain is generating perceptions without corresponding external stimuli. Research on sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations suggests that many abduction reports may result from these neurological phenomena rather than actual encounters with extraterrestrial beings. The scientific consensus attributes the majority of UFO reports to misidentification, psychological factors, or hoaxes. This consensus is based on extensive investigation of UFO reports. When researchers investigate sightings systematically, they can identify conventional explanations for most cases. The explanations are not always immediately obvious. They require investigation analysis and sometimes consultation with experts in astronomy, meteorology, or aviation. Yet the majority of sightings can be explained through conventional means. This finding suggests that misidentification and psychological factors account for most UFO phenomena. Yet this explanation doesn't account for all sightings. A small percentage of reports involve multiple independent witnesses, radar confirmation, and physical evidence that resist conventional explanation. These cases cannot be easily dismissed as misidentifications or psychological phenomena. The Tic-Tac Encounter, the Rendlesham Forest incident, and other well-documented cases involve corroborating evidence that makes conventional explanation difficult. The challenge lies in distinguishing genuine anomalies from misidentifications without dismissing either category prematurely. The relationship between psychological factors and genuine anomalies is complex. It's possible that some UFO phenomena result from psychological factors, while others represent genuine anomalies. It's possible that the same observer could experience both misidentifying some phenomena while genuinely encountering something anomalous on other occasions. The task for investigators is to carefully evaluate each case, considering both psychological factors and the possibility of genuine anomalies. This requires rigorous methodology, careful analysis, and willingness to acknowledge both the power of psychological factors and the possibility that some phenomena remain genuinely unexplained. Understanding psychological and perceptual factors is essential for evaluating UFO claims. The human brain is susceptible to misidentification, particularly when observing unusual phenomena. Psychological factors like expectation, cognitive biases, and social influence shape how observers interpret and remember experiences. Sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations can produce experiences that feel like alien contact. These factors account for many UFO reports, yet acknowledging that many sightings result from misidentification doesn't necessarily explain all phenomena. Some sightings involve corroborating evidence, multiple witnesses, and physical effects that resist conventional explanation. The possibility remains that multiple categories of explanation are required. Some sightings result from misidentification, others from psychological factors, and some from genuinely anomalous phenomena. As we examine alternative explanations for UFO phenomena beyond the extraterrestrial hypothesis, including interdimensional theories, advanced human technology, and natural phenomena not yet understood by science, we'll explore the range of possibilities that might account for unexplained aerial phenomena. The extraterrestrial hypothesis and alternative explanations. Weighing possibilities. Understanding psychological factors and misidentification helps explain many UFO reports. Yet some sightings resist conventional explanation. When investigators encounter phenomena that cannot be easily dismissed, they must consider alternative explanations. The most popular explanation for UFO phenomena is the extraterrestrial hypothesis that some sightings represent visits by spacecraft from other worlds. This hypothesis possesses intuitive appeal and has captured public imagination for decades. Yet it faces significant challenges when examined carefully. Alternative explanations deserve serious consideration as well. The extraterrestrial hypothesis begins with a compelling observation. The universe is vast beyond human comprehension. Modern astronomy has revealed that the observable universe contains billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars. Many of these stars possess planetary systems. The sheer number of planets suggests that Earth is not unique. The probability that intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe seems statistically high. Given this vastness, the idea that extraterrestrial beings might visit Earth appears plausible. If intelligent life exists elsewhere, and if they develop space travel technology, why wouldn't they explore other worlds? The extraterrestrial hypothesis provides an explanation for UFO phenomena that aligns with our understanding of cosmic abundance. However, the extraterrestrial hypothesis faces significant challenges. The first challenge involves the distances between stars. The nearest star system to Earth, Alpha Centauri, is approximately 4.37 light-years away. This means that light from Alpha Centauri takes 4.37 years to reach Earth. A spacecraft traveling at the speed of light would require 4.37 years to reach Alpha Centauri. Current human spacecraft travel at speeds far below the speed of light. The fastest spacecraft ever built, the Parker Solar Probe, travels at approximately 163 kilometers per second. At this speed, it would take approximately 26,000 years to reach Alpha Centauri. Traveling across interstellar space requires technology far beyond current human capability. Even with theoretical propulsion systems like warp drives or wormholes, interstellar travel presents enormous challenges. The second challenge involves the apparent behavior of UFO phenomena. If extraterrestrial visitors are visiting Earth, why do they repeatedly encounter humans without establishing clear communication? Why do they avoid direct contact with governments and institutions? Why do they engage in apparent surveillance activities rather than open contact? The behavior described in UFO reports seems inconsistent with what we might expect from an advanced civilization capable of interstellar travel. An advanced civilization would likely possess superior communication technology. They could establish contact with human governments if they wished. The apparent avoidance of direct contact raises questions about the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The third challenge involves the absence of definitive evidence. Despite decades of UFO sightings, no authenticated extraterrestrial artifact has been recovered. No alien spacecraft has been captured. No alien technology has been reverse engineered successfully. No biological specimens of extraterrestrial origin have been obtained. The absence of such evidence is striking. If extraterrestrial visitors have been visiting Earth for decades, leaving traces of their presence, some definitive evidence should exist. The absence of such evidence troubles supporters of the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Alternative explanations deserve consideration. Some researchers propose interdimensional theories that UFO phenomena represent entities or technology from parallel dimensions rather than distant planets. This hypothesis suggests that UFO craft don't travel across interstellar space, but rather move between dimensions. This would explain why no evidence of interstellar travel is apparent. It would explain the apparent ability of UFO craft to appear and disappear suddenly. It would explain their extraordinary flight characteristics. They're not constrained by the physics of three-dimensional space. However, interdimensional theories face their own challenges. The concept of parallel dimensions remains theoretical. No evidence definitively demonstrates the existence of parallel dimensions or the possibility of crossing between them. Interdimensional theories, while creative, lack empirical support. Other researchers suggest that advanced human technology accounts for some sightings. The U.S. government has invested enormous resources in classified aircraft development. Some sightings might represent these programs. The SR-71 Blackbird, the U-2 spy plane, and other classified aircraft displayed capabilities that seemed extraordinary to observers unfamiliar with them. Modern drone technology, particularly military drones, possesses capabilities that might appear anomalous to observers unfamiliar with the technology. Foreign governments might also possess advanced aircraft or technology that accounts for some sightings. This explanation has the advantage of being grounded in known technology and human capability. However, it doesn't account for all sightings. Some phenomena display characteristics that exceed known aircraft capabilities. Some sightings occur in locations far from military installations. Some sightings involve corroborating evidence that seems inconsistent with classified aircraft. Still others propose that UFO phenomena represent natural phenomena not yet understood by science. Exotic plasma formations might exist in the atmosphere, producing luminous phenomena that observers interpret as craft. Unusual electromagnetic phenomena might create effects that seem anomalous. Rare atmospheric phenomena, not yet documented by science, might account for some sightings. This explanation has the advantage of being grounded in natural processes. It suggests that investigation might reveal new phenomena and expand scientific understanding. However, it requires proposing phenomena that science hasn't yet documented. The challenge lies in determining what these phenomena might be and how they would produce the effects described in UFO reports. Each explanation has strengths and weaknesses. The extraterrestrial hypothesis explains the apparent intelligence and technological sophistication of some phenomena. It provides a framework for understanding why UFO craft display capabilities beyond known human technology. It aligns with the intuitive sense that intelligent life likely exists elsewhere in the universe. Yet it struggles with the implausibility of interstellar travel, the apparent avoidance of direct contact, and the absence of definitive evidence. The hypothesis requires accepting that extraterrestrial beings have visited Earth repeatedly, yet left no definitive proof of their presence. Alternative explanations avoid some of these difficulties. Interdimensional theories explain the apparent ability of UFO craft to appear and disappear. Advanced human technology explains some sightings through known capabilities. Natural phenomena explanations ground UFO phenomena in scientific processes. Yet each alternative introduces new questions. Interdimensional theories require accepting concepts that lack empirical support. Advanced human technology explanations don't account for all sightings. Natural phenomena explanations require proposing phenomena that science hasn't documented. The challenge lies in evaluating evidence fairly without privileging any hypothesis prematurely. Science should remain open to possibilities while maintaining rigorous standards for evidence. The extraterrestrial hypothesis deserves consideration because it provides a coherent framework for understanding some phenomena, yet it shouldn't be accepted without definitive evidence. Alternative explanations deserve consideration because they provide different frameworks for understanding the phenomena, yet they shouldn't be accepted without evidence supporting their plausibility. The multiplicity of plausible explanations suggests that UFO phenomena may not represent a single category requiring a single explanation. Different sightings might result from different causes. Some sightings might result from misidentification of conventional phenomena. Others might result from psychological factors. Still others might result from classified human technology. Some might represent natural phenomena not yet understood by science. A small percentage might represent genuinely anomalous phenomena whose origin remains unknown. The task for investigators is not to find a single explanation that accounts for all UFO phenomena, but to carefully evaluate each case and determine what explanation best fits the available evidence. This approach requires nuanced evaluation rather than blanket acceptance or rejection. It requires distinguishing between different categories of phenomena. It requires acknowledging both the power of conventional explanations and the possibility that some phenomena remain genuinely anomalous. It requires maintaining scientific rigor while remaining open to possibilities that challenge established understanding. This approach is more complex than simply accepting or rejecting the extraterrestrial hypothesis, yet it's more likely to lead to genuine understanding of what UFO phenomena represent. As we examine how UFO phenomena have influenced culture, religion, and social movements, how beliefs about extraterrestrial contact have shaped human society, and how these beliefs reflect broader anxieties about knowledge and institutional authority, we'll explore the cultural significance of UFO phenomena beyond their physical reality. The cultural impact, how UFO beliefs shape society. The question of what UFO phenomena represent extends beyond physical reality into the realm of culture, belief, and social meaning. UFO phenomena have profoundly influenced contemporary culture and belief systems in ways that extend far beyond the question of whether extraterrestrial beings are visiting Earth. The post-World War II era witnessed the emergence of UFO religions and movements centered on extraterrestrial contact. These movements reflect how UFO phenomena have become intertwined with human spirituality, meaning-making, and social organization. Groups like the Raelians, founded in 1974, believe that extraterrestrials created humanity and continue to guide human development. According to Raelian beliefs, advanced beings from another planet created human life through genetic engineering. These beings, called the Elohim, continue to observe humanity and influence human evolution. The Raelian movement has attracted thousands of followers worldwide. Members view extraterrestrial contact not as a scientific question, but as a spiritual reality. They interpret UFO sightings as evidence of the Elohim's continued presence and guidance. The movement demonstrates how UFO beliefs can develop into comprehensive religious systems with theology, ethics, and community structures. Other movements incorporate UFO beliefs into existing religious frameworks. Some groups interpret biblical accounts as descriptions of extraterrestrial visitation. They suggest that biblical figures like Ezekiel, who described seeing wheels within wheels, and beings of light were actually witnessing extraterrestrial spacecraft and aliens. They interpret references to angels, divine beings, and heavenly visitors as descriptions of extraterrestrial contact. This reinterpretation of religious texts demonstrates how UFO beliefs can influence the interpretation of established religious traditions. It shows how people integrate new beliefs about extraterrestrial contact into existing spiritual frameworks. Popular culture has amplified these themes substantially. Science fiction literature, films, and television programs have explored extraterrestrial contact scenarios for decades. Works like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., and The X-Files have shaped public imagination about what extraterrestrial contact might look like. These cultural narratives have become so pervasive that they influence how people interpret actual phenomena. Individuals primed by cultural narratives are more likely to interpret unusual sightings as extraterrestrial. If someone has watched films depicting extraterrestrial craft with specific characteristics, they are more likely to interpret an ambiguous light in the sky as matching those characteristics. Cultural narratives don't just reflect beliefs about UFO phenomena. They actively shape how people perceive and interpret ambiguous phenomena. The influence of popular culture on UFO interpretation is profound. Consider how depictions of extraterrestrial beings in popular culture have evolved. Early science fiction often depicted aliens as grotesque or monstrous. Later depictions became more humanoid with large eyes and small mouths. Contemporary UFO reports often describe beings matching these popular culture depictions. The question arises, are witnesses describing what they actually observed? Or are they unconsciously incorporating cultural narratives into their descriptions? The answer likely involves both. Witnesses describe genuine observations, yet their descriptions are shaped by cultural expectations and popular culture depictions. UFO beliefs have also influenced social and political movements. Some groups view government secrecy about UFO phenomena as evidence of broader institutional deception and control. They argue that if the government is lying about UFO phenomena, what else might they be concealing? This perspective has contributed to broader conspiracy theories and distrust of institutions. Conspiracy theories linking UFO cover-ups to government manipulation have attracted substantial followings. These theories often incorporate elements of UFO phenomena into broader narratives about government control, hidden technology, and institutional deception. The UFO phenomenon becomes a symbol of institutional dishonesty and hidden truth. Conversely, scientific skepticism toward UFO claims has become a cultural marker. In contemporary culture, belief in UFOs is often associated with credulity, irrationality, or gullibility. Skepticism toward UFO claims is associated with rational thinking and scientific literacy. This cultural framing influences how individuals approach evidence and testimony. Someone who believes in UFO phenomena might be dismissed as irrational, while someone who dismisses all UFO claims might be praised as rational. Yet this cultural framing oversimplifies the issue. Rational evaluation of UFO claims requires neither blanket belief nor blanket skepticism, but careful consideration of evidence. The cultural association of UFO belief with irrationality can prevent serious consideration of genuine anomalies. The cultural impact of UFO phenomena extends beyond belief systems to influence scientific funding, institutional priorities, and public trust in institutions. The question of what UFO phenomena represent has become intertwined with questions about institutional credibility and social trust. When institutions deny phenomena that witnesses report credibility, gaps emerge. When institutions later acknowledge phenomena they previously denied, trust is further eroded. The UFO phenomenon has become a symbol of institutional deception and the gap between official statements and reality. UFO beliefs have also influenced how people think about humanity's place in the cosmos. The possibility of extraterrestrial contact raises profound questions about human uniqueness and significance. If extraterrestrial beings exist and have visited Earth, humanity is not alone in the universe. We are not the only intelligent species. Our civilization is not the only civilization. These realizations have psychological and spiritual implications. Some people find the possibility of extraterrestrial contact spiritually meaningful. It suggests that humanity is part of a larger cosmic community. Others find it psychologically troubling, suggesting that humanity is less unique or significant than previously believed. The cultural narratives surrounding UFO phenomena also reflect anxieties about knowledge and institutional authority. UFO beliefs often incorporate themes of hidden knowledge information that governments possess but conceal from the public. The idea that governments know about extraterrestrial contact but refuse to disclose this information appeals to people who distrust institutions. It suggests that truth exists but is being hidden. This narrative is psychologically powerful because it validates suspicions about institutional deception while offering a framework for understanding why institutions might be deceptive. UFO phenomena have also influenced how people think about science and scientific authority. Some UFO believers view scientific skepticism as institutional resistance to new ideas. They argue that science should be more open to the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. Others view scientific skepticism as appropriate caution about extraordinary claims. They argue that science should maintain rigorous standards for evidence. This debate reflects genuine philosophical differences about how science should approach anomalous phenomena. Yet it also reflects broader cultural anxieties about scientific authority and institutional credibility. The cultural impact of UFO phenomena extends to how people think about technology and human capability. UFO phenomena are often interpreted as evidence of technology far beyond human capability. This interpretation reflects anxieties about human technological development. If extraterrestrial beings possess technology so advanced that their crafts seem impossible, what does this suggest about humanity's technological future? Will humanity ever develop comparable technology? The UFO phenomenon becomes a symbol of human limitations and the vast possibilities of technological advancement. UFO phenomena have become cultural symbols representing broader anxieties about knowledge, institutional authority, and humanity's place in the cosmos. Understanding UFO beliefs requires examining cultural narratives alongside empirical evidence. The question of what UFO phenomena represent is not purely a scientific question. It is also a cultural question about meaning, significance, and truth. How people interpret UFO phenomena reflects their beliefs about institutions, science, technology, and humanity's place in the universe. The cultural impact of UFO phenomena extends far beyond the question of whether extraterrestrial beings are visiting Earth. It shapes how people think about knowledge, authority, and reality itself. As we examine recent developments in UFO research and contemporary investigations, how institutions are currently approaching unexplained phenomena, and what these approaches suggest about the future of UFO research, we'll explore how the field is evolving in response to accumulated evidence and changing institutional attitudes. Recent developments and ongoing investigations. The current state of UFO research. The cultural significance of UFO phenomena reflects broader institutional changes in how governments and scientific institutions approach unexplained phenomena. The 21st century has witnessed significant institutional engagement with UFO phenomena, marking a dramatic departure from the denial that characterized previous decades. This shift reflects both accumulated evidence and changing calculations about transparency and credibility. Contemporary developments suggest that UFO research is transitioning from a fringe topic to a subject of serious institutional investigation. The Pentagon established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force in 2020, tasked with investigating encounters reported by military personnel. This represented an official acknowledgment that unexplained phenomena warranted systematic investigation. The task force was given a clear mandate: compile reports from Navy pilots and other military witnesses, analyze encounters systematically, and attempt to determine the nature and origin of UAP. The task force began its work by reviewing decades of accumulated reports. Military personnel had documented UAP encounters for years, yet these reports had often been classified or dismissed. The task force brought together military officers, intelligence analysts, and technical experts to examine this accumulated data. The task force compiled comprehensive reports from Navy pilots and other military witnesses. These reports included the Tic-Tac Encounter we examined earlier, as well as many other documented incidents. The task force analyzed the encounters, systematically looking for patterns and characteristics that might illuminate the nature of the phenomena. They examined radar data, video footage, and eyewitness testimony. They consulted with experts in aviation, physics, and engineering. The systematic analysis represented a departure from previous approaches that had often dismissed UAP reports without rigorous investigation. In 2023, Congress held public hearings on UAP, featuring testimony from military officers and former intelligence officials. These hearings represented unprecedented official acknowledgment of the phenomena. Military officers who had witnessed UAP encounters spoke publicly about their experiences. Former intelligence officials discussed the government's investigation of UAP. The hearings were broadcast publicly, allowing citizens to hear directly from credible witnesses and officials. The congressional attention signaled that UAP investigation had become a matter of official concern and public interest. The hearings also created accountability. Officials were now being asked to explain what the government knew about UAP and what it was doing to investigate. Congress established the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARRO, to coordinate government investigation of UAP across military and intelligence agencies. This represented a significant institutional commitment to UAP investigation. Rather than having different agencies investigate independently, ARRO was tasked with coordinating efforts across the entire government. The office was given authority to access classified information and to coordinate investigation across military intelligence and civilian agencies. The establishment of AIRO suggested that Congress recognized UAP investigation as a priority requiring coordinated institutional effort. Scientific institutions have begun addressing the topic more seriously. The Harvard Astrophysics Center established a research program investigating UAP led by physicist Avi Loeb. Loeb is a respected astrophysicist with significant academic credentials. His decision to establish a research program investigating UAP represented a significant moment in the legitimization of UFO research within academic institutions. Loeb has proposed that some UAP might represent extraterrestrial technology and has advocated for systematic scientific investigation. He has argued that science should approach UAP phenomena with the same rigor applied to other anomalous phenomena. His work has attracted attention from other scientists and has helped establish UAP research as a legitimate scientific endeavor. Other universities have initiated research programs examining UAP sightings and developing methodologies for investigation. These programs represent efforts to apply scientific methodology to UFO phenomena. Researchers are developing systematic approaches to collecting and analyzing UAP data. They are working to establish standards for evaluating evidence and distinguishing genuine anomalies from misidentifications. They are attempting to develop theoretical frameworks that might explain UAP phenomena. These academic efforts represent a significant shift from previous decades when UFO research was largely confined to independent researchers and UFO organizations. International cooperation has increased significantly. Governments worldwide have begun sharing UAP data and coordinating investigation efforts. This international cooperation reflects recognition that UAP phenomena are not limited to any single nation. Sightings have been reported globally. Multiple nations have military personnel who have encountered UAP. International cooperation allows researchers to access data from multiple sources and to develop more comprehensive understanding of the phenomena. The European Union has discussed establishing frameworks for UAP investigation and reporting. This suggests that international institutions are recognizing UAP investigation as a matter of legitimate concern. The shift from denial to investigation reflects both accumulated evidence and changing institutional calculations about transparency and credibility. The evidence accumulated over decades, pilot testimonies, magnetic radar data, video footage, physical effects had become too substantial to deny. The credibility gap created by decades of denial had become too large. Institutions recognized that continued denial was less tenable than cautious acknowledgment. The shift also reflects changing calculations about transparency. Institutions recognize that releasing some information about UAP investigation might actually enhance credibility by appearing transparent. The strategy of cautious acknowledgment allows institutions to appear credible while maintaining control over interpretation. These developments suggest that institutional attitudes toward UFO phenomena are evolving. The shift from dismissal to investigation represents a fundamental change in how institutions approach unexplained phenomena. Yet this shift raises new questions. What will investigation reveal? Will systematic research provide answers about what UAP represent? Will investigation confirm that some phenomena represent extraterrestrial technology? Will investigation reveal that phenomena result from advanced human technology? Will investigation simply accumulate more data about phenomena that remain genuinely anomalous? The current state of UFO research reflects a field in transition. Decades of investigation have produced substantial evidence that unexplained phenomena exist. Yet the fundamental nature of these phenomena remains contested. Some researchers believe that investigation will eventually reveal extraterrestrial contact. Others believe that investigation will reveal advanced human technology or natural phenomena. Still others believe that investigation will simply confirm that some phenomena remain genuinely anomalous. The diversity of perspectives reflects the genuine uncertainty about what UAP represent. Significant questions remain unanswered. What are the physical characteristics of UAP? What propulsion systems do they employ? How do they achieve the flight characteristics described by witnesses? What is their origin? Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, advanced human technology, or natural phenomena? These questions drive current research efforts. Scientists are working to develop methodologies for investigating these questions. They are attempting to collect more systematic data. They are working to develop theoretical frameworks that might explain the phenomena. The fundamental nature of UAP phenomena remains contested. The scientific consensus has shifted from dismissal to cautious investigation. Yet consensus has not emerged about what UAP represent. Different researchers propose different explanations. Some propose extraterrestrial origins. Others propose advanced human technology. Still others propose natural phenomena. The absence of consensus reflects the genuine difficulty of investigating phenomena that resist conventional explanation. It also reflects the diversity of perspectives within the scientific community about how to approach anomalous phenomena. Contemporary developments suggest that UFO phenomena are transitioning from fringe topics to subjects of institutional investigation. This transition represents a significant shift in how institutions approach unexplained phenomena. Yet this transition raises new questions about evidence standards, investigation methodologies, and how institutions should approach genuinely anomalous phenomena. What standards of evidence should guide investigation? How should investigators distinguish between genuine anomalies and misidentifications? How should institutions balance transparency with security concerns? How should scientific investigation proceed when phenomena resist conventional explanation? These questions will guide UFO research in coming years. As we examine the fundamental mysteries that remain unanswered about UFO phenomena, the questions that continue to perplex researchers, and the possibilities that investigation might eventually reveal, we'll explore what the future might hold for our understanding of these extraordinary phenomena. Mysteries that remain, unanswered questions, and future directions. The institutional investigations and scientific research efforts we've examined represent humanity's attempt to understand UFO phenomena systematically. Yet despite decades of investigation, fundamental questions about UFO phenomena remain unanswered. These unanswered questions drive continued research and investigation. They represent the frontier of our understanding of unexplained aerial phenomena. The persistence of these mysteries suggests that answers may require new approaches, new technology, or new frameworks for understanding reality itself. The most fundamental question remains: what are the objects reported in credible sightings? This question seems simple, yet it encompasses enormous complexity. The objects reported in credible sightings display characteristics that resist conventional explanation. They move at extraordinary speeds. They make turns that should be impossible. They hover silently without visible propulsion. They appear and disappear from radar. They seem to respond to observer movements. Yet despite these characteristics, no definitive identification has been established. The objects remain unidentified, their nature unknown. If the objects represent extraterrestrial technology, fundamental questions arise. Where do visitors originate? The nearest star system is over 4 light-years away. Traveling across interstellar space presents enormous challenges. Yet if extraterrestrial visitors are visiting Earth, they must have solved these challenges. What propulsion systems do they employ? What energy sources power their craft? How do they navigate across interstellar distances? Why do they visit Earth? What is their purpose? Are they conducting scientific research? Are they observing human civilization? Are they harvesting resources? The absence of clear communication makes their intentions unclear. If the objects represent advanced human technology, different questions arise. Which nations possess such capabilities? The United States has invested enormous resources in classified aircraft development. Could some sightings represent classified American technology? Could foreign nations possess comparable or superior technology? Russia, China, or other nations might have developed advanced aircraft unknown to the public. Why would nations maintain secrecy about such technology? National security concerns would justify secrecy about advanced military capabilities. Yet the apparent capabilities of some UAP exceed known human technology. If humans developed such technology, where is the evidence? If the objects represent natural phenomena, still different questions arise. What physical processes generate objects displaying apparent intelligence and technological sophistication? Natural phenomena exist that science hasn't fully documented. Exotic plasma formations might exist in the atmosphere. Unusual electromagnetic phenomena might create effects that seem anomalous. Rare atmospheric phenomena might account for some sightings. Yet natural phenomena typically follow predictable patterns. They don't typically display apparent intelligence or respond to observer movements. How could natural phenomena account for the characteristics described in credible sightings? The absence of definitive physical evidence complicates investigation. No recovered extraterrestrial spacecraft has been publicly displayed or scientifically analyzed. No alien artifacts have been authenticated. The most compelling evidence remains eyewitness testimony and radar data, both of which are subject to interpretation and potential error. Eyewitness testimony can be unreliable. Radar data can be misinterpreted. Yet the consistency of testimony across independent observers and the corroboration of radar data suggest that something genuine is occurring. The challenge lies in determining what that something is. Future research directions include systematic collection and analysis of UAP data using advanced technology. Satellite networks and ground-based sensors could provide continuous monitoring of airspace, potentially capturing phenomena that currently escape documentation. Modern sensor technology is far more sophisticated than technology available decades ago. Satellites equipped with advanced imaging systems could detect and track objects in the atmosphere. Ground-based radar networks could provide continuous monitoring. Acoustic sensors could detect sounds associated with UAP. Electromagnetic sensors could detect radiation or electromagnetic fields. This technological infrastructure could provide data that eyewitness testimony alone cannot provide. Interdisciplinary investigation combining physics, psychology, engineering, and other fields might illuminate phenomena that single disciplines struggle to explain. Physics could address questions about propulsion systems and energy sources. Psychology could address questions about perception and misidentification. Engineering could address questions about craft design and construction. Astronomy could address questions about extraterrestrial origins. Meteorology could address questions about atmospheric phenomena. The integration of multiple disciplines might reveal insights that single disciplines cannot provide. International cooperation could facilitate data sharing and coordinated investigation. UFO sightings have been reported globally. Multiple nations have military personnel who have encountered UAP. International cooperation allows researchers to access data from multiple sources. It allows comparison of sightings across different regions and time periods. It facilitates development of coordinated investigation protocols. International cooperation also addresses the reality that UFO phenomena are not limited to any single nation or region. Understanding them requires global perspective and coordinated effort. The possibility remains that UFO phenomena represent multiple categories requiring different explanations. Some sightings might result from misidentification of conventional phenomena. Observers might misidentify celestial objects, aircraft, or atmospheric phenomena. Other sightings might result from classified human technology. Military aircraft or experimental technology might account for some sightings. Still other sightings might result from genuinely anomalous phenomena. The challenge lies in developing investigation methodologies that distinguish between these categories without prematurely dismissing any possibility. The development of such methodologies requires careful thought about evidence standards and investigation approaches. Investigators must distinguish between genuine anomalies and misidentifications without assuming that all sightings result from misidentification. They must consider the possibility of advanced human technology without assuming that all sightings result from classified programs. They must remain open to the possibility of extraterrestrial contact without assuming that all sightings represent alien craft. This balanced approach requires intellectual flexibility and careful evaluation of evidence. The fundamental question underlying all investigation remains whether humanity shares the cosmos with other intelligent beings. This question has profound implications for human understanding of our place in the universe. If intelligent extraterrestrial life exists and has visited Earth, humanity is not alone. We are part of a larger cosmic community. Our civilization is not the only civilization. Our species is not the only intelligent species. These realizations have philosophical, religious, and psychological implications. They challenge assumptions about human uniqueness and significance. Yet this fundamental question cannot be answered definitively based on current evidence. The existence of UFO phenomena does not definitively establish the existence of extraterrestrial life. UFO phenomena might represent advanced human technology, natural phenomena, or genuinely anomalous phenomena. They might represent extraterrestrial contact, or they might represent something else entirely. The persistence of the question reflects the genuine uncertainty about what UFO phenomena represent. The persistence of unanswered questions suggests that UFO phenomena will continue to intrigue and perplex humanity. The questions raised by UFO phenomena are not merely scientific questions. They are philosophical questions about knowledge and reality. They are questions about institutional credibility and transparency. They are questions about humanity's place in the cosmos. Whether answers emerge through scientific investigation, technological advancement, or direct contact remains to be seen. The journey of discovery continues. Future generations will likely continue investigating these phenomena, seeking answers to questions that have puzzled humanity for decades. The mystery endures, inviting continued exploration and investigation. Over the past 3 hours and 15 minutes, we've journeyed through one of the most complex and contested mysteries of the modern era. We began with Roswell, that moment in 1947 when something fell from the sky, and the government's response raised questions that would persist for decades. We explored how the military systematized investigation through Project Blue Book, documenting thousands of sightings while publicly maintaining skepticism. We examined the testimonies of credible witnesses, pilots whose professional expertise and institutional authority lent weight to their accounts. We investigated Area 51, that remote facility where classified aircraft development and public speculation about extraterrestrial technology became inextricably intertwined. We considered the claims of whistleblowers, like Bob Lazar, whose detailed technical descriptions challenged us to evaluate testimony from individuals with apparent expertise but unverifiable backgrounds. We examined the Travis Walton case, one of the most extensively documented alleged abduction incidents, which demonstrated how even well-documented encounters remain contested and unresolved. We witnessed the Pentagon's gradual shift from official denial to cautious acknowledgment, as declassified documents and video evidence from Navy pilots became impossible to dismiss. We explored the Tic-Tac Encounter, a modern, thoroughly documented case involving multiple independent verification systems that demonstrated anomalous phenomena continue to occur in contemporary times. We investigated the physical and electromagnetic effects reported during UFO encounters, examining how genuine phenomena might provide bridges between subjective observation and objective measurement. We explored the institutional reasons for government secrecy, how national security concerns, institutional credibility, and psychological management all contributed to decades of denial. We examined how scientific skepticism approaches extraordinary claims and the philosophical challenges of investigating phenomena that resist conventional explanation. We considered psychological factors and misidentification, acknowledging that many UFO reports result from human perception and psychological processes. We weighed the extraterrestrial hypothesis against alternative explanations, interdimensional theories, advanced human technology, and natural phenomena not yet understood by science. We explored how UFO phenomena have profoundly influenced culture and belief systems, becoming symbols representing broader anxieties about knowledge, institutional authority, and humanity's place in the cosmos. We examined recent institutional developments, the Pentagon's task force, congressional hearings, scientific research programs, and international cooperation, suggesting that UFO investigation is transitioning from fringe topic to a subject of serious institutional attention. And finally, we confronted the mysteries that remain fundamental questions about what these phenomena represent, where they originate, and what they reveal about the limits of human knowledge. What emerges from this exploration is not a simple answer, but a more nuanced understanding of a complex phenomenon. We've seen how genuine anomalies can coexist with misidentifications, how classified military programs can blur with speculation about extraterrestrial contact, how institutional denial can persist alongside classified investigation, how credible witnesses can describe phenomena that resist conventional explanation, yet remain genuinely contested by the scientific community. The story of UFO phenomena is ultimately a story about how humans respond to the unknown with curiosity and fear, investigation, and denial, openness, and skepticism. This story matters because it reveals something fundamental about institutions, knowledge, and human nature. It demonstrates how governments balance competing priorities: national security, institutional credibility, and public confidence. It shows how science approaches phenomena that challenge established understanding. It illustrates how human perception and psychology shape our interpretation of ambiguous phenomena. It reveals the gap between what institutions know and what they tell the public, and how this gap erodes trust. Most profoundly, it raises the question of whether humanity shares the cosmos with other intelligent beings, a question that has captivated human imagination for centuries and continues to perplex us today. The investigation of UFO phenomena is not static. New discoveries continue. Declassified documents reveal information previously hidden. Scientific institutions are beginning to take the topic seriously. Governments are gradually acknowledging phenomena they previously denied. Technology is improving, potentially providing better documentation of anomalous events. International cooperation is increasing. The future of UFO research remains open. Whether investigation will eventually provide definitive answers, whether we'll discover that some phenomena represent extraterrestrial contact, advanced human technology, natural processes not yet understood, or something else entirely remains to be seen. What is certain is that the questions will persist, driving continued exploration and investigation. There is something deeply human about our fascination with mysteries. We are drawn to questions without easy answers, to phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality. The study of UFO phenomena, like the study of history itself, connects us to something larger than ourselves. It reminds us that the universe is vast and our knowledge is limited. It invites us to remain curious, to question official narratives, to examine evidence carefully, and to acknowledge what we genuinely don't know. It suggests that there is always more to discover, always new possibilities to consider, always mysteries waiting to be explored. Thank you for joining this journey through the mysteries of UFO phenomena, government secrecy, and the enduring questions about what we share the cosmos with. If you found this exploration worthwhile, there are other mysteries waiting to be examined, other stories of the unknown, the hidden, and the yet to be understood. But for now, let yourself drift into sleep with these questions gently settling in your mind. The mysteries will remain. The investigation will continue. And perhaps one day answers will emerge from the darkness. Rest well and good night.